boys become men when postseasons begin. These lights shine brighter, baby, sink or you swim. To those who got here by the skin of their teeth, the formula's the same now, win and repeat. Never sleep on a man that's expected to lose, with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. The bottom's full of wolves and they thirsty for blood. The mission is to catch somebody slipping above.
And now, your Reunion Lights podcast starting lineup, brought to you by Twitch TV. Add guest, in his first appearance, a basketball fan and film critic from South Carolina, Mike Bibbins. Starting in his fourth appearance at the other guest, credentialed scout, friend of the show, Mavs draft himself, Richard Stamen. In his seventh episode, head writer and co-host of the show that you are here to attend, Fazl Ahmed. And finally, also in my seventh episode as host of the Union of the... Oh my god. I fucked that up, guys. I fucked it up. I decided to do it live, too. It's fucking fantastic. You know, 7 episodes, and this is the first time it's happened. And you know why it is? Because Jay isn't here. That's the only discernible reason as to why I fucked up.
Fuck it, we're going live.
We're doing it live! Alright, Mike is here, Richie is here. This is the first time we have had 2 guests on the Under Reunion Lights podcast live. Fazl and I are your hosts. We're here every month, but Jay unfortunately is not here. We were joking earlier that it's because he joined the Warriors bandwagon for this playoffs, so we kind of disowned him. But he's just really busy. Mike, how you doing? Can you hear us?
Doing good.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I think we're gonna get into some good conversation about both the playoffs and upcoming draft scouting. I had a chance to look through your blog earlier, and what really struck me is that you were really on the Dennis Smith train for a while, and you also do some film write-ups and stuff, and I enjoyed those too. But I did focus on the basketball, at least for the predictions and such. And I do have to say, I'm a fan of how detailed you get in your predictions.
No, definitely. I'm not gonna put anything out if I don't put some time and energy into it. So if I'm putting anything on there and I haven't in a long time, then I put some real thought into it. I'm thinking usually 5 years ahead when I'm scouting players. So.
All right. So I think the second half of this discussion is going to be very interesting then, because we got you and Richie both here to talk about that long-term scouting, and it'll be interesting to see how your eye tests kind of share certain qualities and also where they diverge. So before we get to that, let's go to the playoff predictions, because we've seen a little more than half of the first round series start up over the past 2 days, and I think we've got a good bearing on how tight a lot of these series are going to be. A couple of them seem like they're going to go back and forth over the next maybe 5 or 7 games, depending on whether they've played yet. This one that we're watching right now is one of those. What do you think, Richie? Which series do you think are going to go to a game 7?
I think almost every one of them will, or at least a game 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, we're watching this Utah one. I think this is one. I think most of the West could honestly go, most of the East. I don't see San Antonio, Golden State, or the Houston series going to 7, but any of the other ones are fair game.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say definitely Utah, and then Portland, New Orleans, and then out East, not certain.
Okay. Well, in the East, I feel like we have some of the better matchups, but I think we should go to Mike before we really go series by series. Mike, which series are you most excited to watch?
Oh man, that's a really tough question. There's a lot of guys I like. Obviously, I'm a big Mavs fan, so Dirk is my favorite player. But the Giannis Antetokounmpo and Dame Lillard are number 2 and 3.
Okay.
Gobert's number 4. So, favorite series, the Blazers Pelicans. I think that's going to be a 7-gamer. Celtics, I think, can also be a 7-game series. Um, and the Heat and the Sixers, I think, is going to be more interesting than it may have looked in that first game.
Okay. I generally agree with you there. Let's start out east. We kind of have gotten our feet wet with the Sixers and Heat and Bucks and Celtics, and today we got Cavs, Pacers, and Raptors, Wizards, right? So I think Richie is on the side of saying that the Wizards are the worst team in this playoffs, and unfortunately, I have to agree. Just top to bottom, like they do have star power. I just don't feel like they have the cohesion necessary to really give the Raptors the fight that they're gonna get in the second round. But Sixers and Heat, a lot of people, at least casual NBA fans, underrate the Heat, or if you're in Miami, you overrate the Heat. But I don't see a lot of like candor when it comes to rating that series, because the Sixers have the star power, but the Heat have the cohesion in that series. Their team works together pretty well, other than Hassan Whiteside right about now. So, do you think, Fazal, that series is going to go to 7 games?
It's gonna go to 7. I mean, before it started, I would have guessed, but I don't know. Game 1's like changed my perception of that a lot, because that was just, I don't know, that was just straight up a blowout. Do I think Whiteside's gonna continue to be as shitty as he was in Game 1? Maybe. I see Richie nodding. I think he's definitely overrated, especially this season. There's a reason he hasn't been playing fourth quarters.
Yeah.
But I do think he's going to pick it up at least a little, especially when Embiid comes back, because Whiteside has like a grudge against Embiid. So
yeah. It seems like Joel Embiid is the type of guy that really doesn't back down from competition.
Yeah.
I mean, he had that entire thing with Russell Westbrook throughout the regular season. And we saw that bleed into All-Star break a little bit, which was kind of refreshing. I don't think we see that a lot between All-Stars at least. But I think it's pretty safe, at least on my end, to say that the Sixers are making it out of that series. I just love the way that they're playing basketball, and I kind of hate to say it because I don't want to reward the way that they built their team, but they got all the right pieces, and I think it's going to be a fun 6-game series.
I mean, first with Whiteside, like in a center who has attitude issues, especially in the playoffs. I don't know. Right now, maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but I'm not too trusting of that. I still think the Sixers are gonna win, but it'll get a 6 or 7. I think Eric Spoelstra is just that good.
Okay.
But I'm not sure about the rest of the playoffs for the Sixers. I feel like it's too good to be true for them to be going to the Eastern Conference Finals, even though I did pick them going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, okay. A part of that is because with the Sixers, their new additions, Ilyasova and Bellinelli, they've really turned the team around. But I don't know how I feel about them in the playoffs, especially Bellinelli. Bellinelli's shot selection is pretty garbage. And he's been on fire, both of them have, but I don't really trust them, especially when the defenses maybe start to key in on them to like continue making the shots they've made.
Mike, who do you think are going to be the X factors in this series?
Okay. So first, just based off that first game, if you look at what happened, do we think that JJ Redick and Bellinelli are going to average 50 points a game in the series? I personally don't think that's going to happen. So obviously, them making shots is going to be a big deal. Embiid, when he comes back, I'm curious how he's going to fit in there because he's missed a lot of this run that they've been on. And all it takes is a little bit of nuance, something new happening to mess up a rhythm. I think the Sixers are weirdly placed. I don't think they're good enough. They shouldn't be good enough to make a run. But just the way that the East is lined up right now, it's perfect for them to accidentally get to the conference finals. If they get past the Heat, right now they're playing off the sheer momentum. They think they're invincible right now. I think the Heat need to slap them in the face at home at least once to steal the series. But as far as the X factors on the Heat side, I think Dragic really needs to step up and show that veteran leadership, and that's what will get them to that 6th or 7th game.
Okay, I honestly can't disagree with anything that you said there. I do think that the Embiid situation, I wouldn't necessarily agree that it's going to be that difficult. I think probably the hardest part is going to be getting his shooting rhythm in place, because he does have that game where he can stretch the floor a little bit. I think he'll be fine from the post and in the pinch post with Ben Simmons. I am not sure how their perimeter offense is going to look, and that's really what I'm curious to see. But I think we should move on to Bucks Celtics. That was a controversial game today, at least in the way that the refs called it. There were at least one or two really eyebrow-raising calls, and yeah, we've seen a lot of those calls throughout the regular season. A part of me was hoping that the refs would get their crap together for this postseason, and it seems like maybe not all of them did. Now, the Celtics, they're not getting Hayward back this playoffs, are they? They officially shut him down?
Mm-hmm.
And is Kyrie just out for the first round?
No, the season.
For the entire season?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I gotta call Bucks on that one then. I mean, Brad Stevens is really good at getting as much out of his players as he can, and the Bucks have a coaching problem right now. But I think Giannis is going to take over that series.
I disagree. Brad Stevens is just too good, and they've got enough to work with. I mean, Tatum's been good. Marcus Morris really showed up today. Horford's an all-star. I think in that one, it's almost a toss-up. I think that's one of them that's going to go to 7, though. I have the Celtics winning that one, though, in 7. I think that's too much coaching advantage. The Bucks coaching is just terrible.
Mike?
Yep. So I also have Bucks in 7. Same reasons. The only reason I think it gets to 7 is because of the coaching disparity. Because I have no idea what's going on with the Bucks in that regard. But see the way Giannis started the season, and I feel like that Giannis is coming back for the playoffs. The way they got him out of this game is just going to make him that much angrier coming into the next game, and I expect him to dunk on at least 5 people every game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I only wish that a guy like Greg Monroe could be an X factor in this series, but I don't know.
Greg Monroe revenge series.
Are we talking about Detroit Greg Monroe, or are we talking about Milwaukee Greg Monroe?
Phoenix.
Oh god. All right. So, Fossil, we get to hear your take
on Bucks Celtics.
Yeah.
Shoot, I'd give them 6 or 7, and I'd say like that's bad for the Bucks because with both Kyrie and Hayward out, like they really should not have the talent to match up with them. Like I'm pretty sure we've all covered this, but yeah, I'd say maybe the Celtics even advance if Kidd were still the coach, but now they've got Joe Prunty, who I wouldn't say is like an amazing coach, but he's like average, better than Kidd at least. So they should. I don't know. It took them like apparently 3 quarters. I wasn't able to really watch the game today, but I heard like it took them like 3.5 quarters to figure out, hey, maybe we should switch on the Celtics. So there's that. But as far as like the Celtics go, I don't know. They got a lot of good talent still remaining, like Horford and Tatum specifically. But I'm not sure if I like really trust like Rozier and what's his face Larkin to like carry the load.
Shane Larkin especially. All right, last round of questions at least on this. Do you think that the depth chart is really going to be the difference between the two teams right now? And on, I guess, a tangential note, do you think the Bucks firing Kidd is what's going to keep them from making this like a sure thing?
No, I think keeping Kidd would have had the same result. I don't think it's really gonna change much. I don't think there's too much of a difference between Kidd and blanking on who the coach is now. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna be too impactful.
Okay. I mean, after all, it is still kids' coaching team, but he's just not at the head of it. And I guess that's good because the Bucks aren't playing some of those weird lineups that we were talking about, I think 2 episodes ago. But I don't know. I feel like if they really had that coaching philosophy that they've had since day one, at least on defense, maybe even though they were bad at the end of the regular season, they could kind of will themselves back a little bit, make the series a little more competitive than I think Richie is looking at it. It is pretty difficult to make it more competitive than a Game 7, but I think from what you were saying, Richie, it's going to be really competitive just because they have Giannis and they have enough talent to where it's kind of unavoidable for the Celtics, especially without Kyrie and Hayward.
Yeah, like for once the Bucks are all healthy coming into the playoffs. That's I mean Malcolm Brogdon is on a minutes restriction, but even still they have like Middleton, they have Jabari back, they have Giannis, they have all their guys. This would be, I guess, a little more of a sure thing if Thon Maker or Thon McCurr, apparently that's how you pronounce his name, wasn't so garbage. But yeah, this should be like honestly just by the talent disparity, it should be like pretty open and shut. But I don't know. The Bucks are in a they've been their development has been kind of stunted because of just the poor coaching over the past year or so.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I do think the Celtics. Well, the only reason I think the Celtics can hang is because of their ability to get the most out of everybody. And the Bucks are kind of just throwing it out there and see what happens, as far as what I can tell. Giannis being the best player in the series and knowing that he's capable of going for 40 if he wants to, I think that's really what's gonna keep the Bucks really competitive in every game, no matter how it's actually going, as far as basketball is concerned. What I saw down the stretch in this game 1, or a lot of the game actually, I only saw the second half, but the Celtics were exploiting the Bucks like not being in the right places or making the wrong and wide open layups and wide open jumpers off of just bad decision making on the court by the Bucks.
Right.
On whatever he wants. Meanwhile, on the other end.
Yeah, that is fair. Part of me wishes that Giannis as a point forward would have more ball handling responsibilities, but I'm not sure how that would even work because he's already doing so much for them.
Yeah.
I guess they also don't have the pieces to really run a sophisticated offense that really gets predetermined shots in the way that the Celtics do when everyone's healthy, or for that, what the Jazz or the Mavs do. But I do think that I'm gonna stick with my pick that the Bucks are gonna end up winning this series and it's gonna be a 7-gamer. But I only really see there being 2 7-gamers throughout the entire playoffs. Let's move to the last team in the East, the Cavs Pacers, just with an eye on time. We saw the first game of that series just before this episode started, and I have to say I was kind of disappointed in the Cavs in every quarter except for the third. They made a 15-4 run during that quarter. Their defense was pretty good, and they got a couple of really good contested threes. But I think the story of the game really was, at least until halftime, that they were 2 for 12 on 3-pointers, and the Pacers were, I think, 6 for 13. And until that point, at least before halftime, that was pretty much the difference in the game because the Pacers were up, I think, around 12 or 13 at that point, and that's exactly the disparity in the threes that they made. Do you think that having LeBron means that the Cavs should be the favorites to win this series, even though they just lost game 1?
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, the Pacers, they got one. I think that's going to go to 6 or maybe if they're lucky 7. But LeBron's going to come back. I mean, he had an off game too. No one had a good game for the Cavs except if I'm not mistaken, I think J.R. Smith had one of their like most efficient games.
Yeah.
That's not happening again.
Yeah, at one point in the third quarter, he shot this contested three with the
That's
guy
JR.
3 inches taller than him, and I was like, "Hey, we haven't seen him all season, but we finally got him for one game." And hey, he kind of helped them come back in that game. Kevin Love had some down moments, but he was shooting the three pretty decently. LeBron started the game 0 for 3, but then in the second quarter, he went, I think, 5 of 6. And yeah, he missed a couple of free throws, but I don't think that's happening in a game 2, game 3, game 4 scenario. My question really is, are Hill and Hood going to step it up? Because I don't see them playing their individual games with the confidence that I have seen them play, at least in Utah, or in Hill's case, in Indiana in some of the earlier years. But then again, we haven't seen that from George Hill in a while. Mike, do you think that this team is going to be able to become a tight... let me rephrase that. Do you think that they're going to be able to muster up the cohesion necessary to make a deep run through these playoffs?
I think that's up to LeBron when it comes down to it. And it's something that you've seen throughout LeBron's history with his teams, is that guys get there and suddenly forget what they were brought there for. They're all watching LeBron, waiting to follow his lead, and LeBron isn't always providing the right lead in that sense. He likes to get on people in ways that maybe don't work for them. I think what it's going to come down to is LeBron and the veteran experience. I think the Pacers are kind of in the same boat that Philly's in, where they're winning because they don't know any better. It reminds me of like the Thunder back in 2011. Yeah, they had a ton of talent, but they hadn't been there before. And I'm a huge believer in run and get smacked so that you come back hungrier before you can really break through and get to the ring. And I think that's what's going to happen to both of those teams. I would be surprised if LeBron doesn't put it together, doesn't hit Hood for a big three in the corner to get his confidence going, things like that. Might be the next game. It might not start till they get to game 3, but I would be surprised if the Pacers came out of the series.
And is it just me, or is it like almost all the teams in the East have that group of guys that just hasn't been there before? Like, I was reluctant to pick half the teams to the Eastern Conference Finals because Victor Oladipo hasn't been the guy on the team. Like, sure, he made the playoffs last year, but how important was he actually on that team? You know, the Sixers are full of guys who just haven't been there outside of Ilyasova and Bellinelli. It's a really weird year for the East. I haven't seen something like this too much when the most experienced players are DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and LeBron James as the heads of the team. Like, there's only 3. Usually, you know, there's Paul George in it. And that's, I think, because of the depleted talent from the East at the top. But it's just something that hasn't happened like that, I don't think, in quite a while, where there's just been teams headed by guys who haven't been there.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the nose with the talent disparity. But throughout the regular season, one thing that I did notice is that talent disparity allowed for certain younger players to have more, at least have more command over the X's and O's on the floor than they maybe would have 2 years ago when you had, well, not 2 years ago now, but I think 3 years ago when you had the Pacers kind of rivaling LeBron's dominance in the East. And then we had the Raptors rise up a little bit, and there have been 3 or 4 pillars of at least experienced decision making in the East. But now that we've lost, I think 2 of them, and then the third is Toronto, and I don't think many people really respect what they can do in a series against LeBron, or even the Sixers for that matter. You're ending up with, let's say, Ben Simmons having so much room to operate and having such a unique game to where I think even though he's not experienced, it's still going to be a very good playoffs for them, and it's going to be fun to watch, at least in the later rounds. However, I do want to get Fazl's take on the Cavs and Pacers, because I want to move to the West, because we're watching this Thunder Jazz game, and I have a feeling that we're itching to talk about it. So.
Yeah, so just like the rest of you guys, I can't see LeBron losing in round one. I can't see the Cavs losing to the Pacers, just like by the composition of the teams. But George Hill and what's his face, Rodney Hood. Yeah, as you guys mentioned, well, with Hill, I feel that's strange. I would bet on him riding the ship, but like this entire season, he just hasn't been playing well. In Sacramento, he was subpar, which I mean, I guess I can sort of understand that because Sacramento. But even when he got to Cleveland, he didn't have that much of an improvement. I feel. And then as far as Hood goes, well, apparently Hood's been like hurt lately. He's been,
Always.
yeah. that's kind of the story with him. But I hear he's been like easing back into minutes, right? I mean, I imagine so at least. I like as far as his ceiling goes, as far as like what he's shown. I like what he can do for like any team. I feel like he was a really underrated pickup for the Cavs, but if he's not playing well, then I mean he's not playing well, and that's like another disappointment to like add on, and then just it what's the word, adds on to LeBron's workload even more. Yeah. And I mean, he and K-Love have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. That's fine. I guess they can definitely manage it for round one, but as far as it goes later and later the playoffs, even LeBron gets fatigued. Like we saw that in 2015. Yeah, he got gassed and against the Warriors. So it's something to look out for as we move on further in.
Speaking of gassed, I think this would be a great opportunity to talk about the Wolves, who are probably going to have their starters play every minute of the game tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting series. I mean, I don't think any of the four of us here, think that they're going to win that series.
They'll win one. They'll win one game at most.
Yeah. The Rockets just have it in another gear, and I think that's really the going back to the question that Richie posed. With those younger teams who maybe have one or two experienced guys in their team, I think the Wolves are in a better position than the Sixers, let's say, if you're going West compared to East. But I think the issue with a team like the Cavs, kind of going back to them a little bit, but then using that as a comparison for the Rockets and T-Wolves, is that the Cavs have had so much roster movement over the past season that they really don't have a set offense. They're trying to play a flow offense between guys that don't necessarily understand where each other want the shots, or they're not used to LeBron passing cross court with that much power behind it necessarily. They aren't used to the way that Love or Jeff Green is going to set picks. And so all of those little things add up, and they just don't seem as confident with the ball. And I think that's the issue with Rodney Hood and George Hill. But on the flip side, I think with the Wolves, that's why it's going to be a good series, and why I'm a little sad that they got matched up with the Rockets, because they're definitely going out. But I feel as if they had found a matchup against the Thunder or against one of the Pelicans or Blazers, that would have been a series that I would have said is going to 7 games.
I think Mike said it best, though. Like, next year, that team is going to come back hungry, and I do not want to face that team. Like, I feel bad for whoever has to go against the Wolves in the playoffs next year.
Towns especially. There's been a lot of marketing going on Karl Anthony Towns then, because when they made the playoffs, I think the last game of the regular season, he had a really emotional moment. And going back to what Richie just referred to, Mike, when you said that they need to take that whooping so they can come back and be a better, or at least study a little more and come back with a better head on their shoulders and kind of show us what they can do, I feel like it is going to make them as a team better in the future.
And it comes down to personalities too. Like a guy can take that whooping and come back and be scared the next time. But I think a guy like Jimmy Butler, if he goes out, he goes and battles against James Harden for 4 or 5 games or whatever, he's going to be watching that film all summer and figuring out what he needs to do to come back and shut James Harden down next year. That's what excites me about these matchups, even when these all these first round matchups in the West are going to be interesting. I'm kind of upset at some of the matchups. Pelicans, Blazers. I mean, either one of those teams can challenge the Rockets, depending on the situations. But
Right.
again, all these guys are hungry. Versus the East, it's all about guys getting their first taste. Everybody in the West is hungry already. So it's going to be a battle, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Just going to be better for it overall when it's done.
definitely. Uh, so for the Rockets T Wolves, Basel, do you think that series is going to 6 games?
Um, no, I'd probably still put it at 5 at the most.
Yeah.
I like the Wolves kind of like as far as their core goes, Towns and Butler um and well, Towns and Butler, they're good. I especially like Towns because his offensive game is just phenomenal. Like his
Oh, yeah.
efficiency is it's crazy. It's nothing I've seen since practically since Dirk almost. Like
Yeah.
if you look at the actual numbers,
Oh yeah, he's transcendented.
yeah. And then and then Butler, like he is who he is. Like I really like his game. I feel almost underrated on offense, and obviously defensively he's one of the premier players. Like he's a true two-way player, so that's can never be under that can never be like not helpful. I don't know what I'm saying, but as far as like I don't like some of their roster moves. Like trading Ricky Rubio for Jeff Teague was never a fan of that. Signing Jamal Crawford, like he's at this point in his career, no. And then Wiggins, that's not exactly their fault, but as far as he plays into the team and his role, like the amount of shots he takes, I'm not a fan of that. I don't know how they're gonna figure that out if they have to trade him or something. I'm hoping, like, I think he can be a good player one day. It does not seem like out of the realm of possibility for him to mature and take better shots, smarter shots, and maybe learn how to distribute. Like, um, although I would say like some of his stats like currently are a little concerning beyond offense. Like his defense is, and his rebounding, it's just not not like I would expect. Um, and let's see, they have Taj Gibson. He's good, but he's still good, but he's old, so they might have to look at doing something about that.
No, so Jang.
Yeah, Jank, I don't know how I feel about him. Sometimes I feel like he's, decent, he can play, but
He's kind of hit the three this year a little bit.
yeah, but then sometimes I feel like he's not worth the money he's getting, so
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. Um, the issue though with their coach Tibbs, it's just the minutes, like we all know, but he's not a great offensive coach, like by far, and he's his advantages, like his knowledge of defensive schemes and all that. That was like revolutionary back in 2008 when he was an assistant with Boston, but by now the rest of the league is kind of caught up. So I don't know how they go forward with that. I just it sounds weird to say fire him when he just got you the playoffs for the first time in what 14 years, but I like their potential is kind of capped with him. I feel.
Yeah, I don't think that they're winning an NBA championship with him, but I think I have to disagree with you on the Jamal Crawford thing. I feel like maybe not this season, but next season when they kind of are poised to make a deeper run in the playoffs, him being rested is going to help even at his age because he can break a defender down. Like even at his age, he can make some defenders look like fools. I mean, he isn't Lou Williams obviously, but Lou Williams is younger and he's a little quicker at this point in his career. Anything
Yeah,
else
let me
on
hop
this
in.
one?
Yeah, let me jump in there. So, Tim, I agree with the Thibodeau thing. I think the thing I see with them is that they overperform just because he keeps his starters in so long, and but they tire out and then they fall apart down the stretch of games. Like they'll be leading the entire game, and then by the fourth quarter they're tired and they start to lose the lead. Um, I think they have the pieces to really compete almost, but I think what I would look to do if I was in the front office there is try to trade Wiggins for a sharpshooter type player. Um, But I think they need to get Wiggins out, get a guy on the wing that can just hit jump shots all day. Whether that's not going to use a lot of energy to get those jump shots off. I would love to see somebody talk to Thibodeau and get him to play his bench guys just a little bit throughout the game, so that his starters aren't dead at the end. But if not, then yeah, he's gonna have to go at some point for that roster to really fully reach its potential, in my opinion.
I got a trade idea. What if you did Andrew Wiggins for Evan Fournier?
I would take that in a heartbeat.
I think both teams take it. The Magic are desperate for that. Like, as much as that pains me to say, they need that. They need someone. I don't want to say like revolutionary because he's not, but someone that can bring excitement. Like, they haven't had that in a really long time. If you did a 1-for-1 swap, maybe do some picks, something, work some magic in there. I think both teams would. Oh yeah, I didn't even. I think both teams would definitely be interested in that. What do you think, Mike? So I said for a sharpshooter and Fournier. Oh, sorry.
Fournier is one of my favorite guys. I've liked him since I started scouting him back in the day. But he needs a new look. I think the Magic really need to blow it up almost. I hate to say that, but it seems like there's a ton of locker room problems. Guys don't seem to like each other for whatever reason. I don't know if that's on the coach or what the case was down there. But I would love to see Fournier with another team, and seeing him beside Jimmy Butler, that would be interesting. I could see them going back to back on buckets down the stretch of a big game.
I kind of feel bad for interrupting Richie
in the middle
of Magic talk, because he's a Magic Mavs fan. But I feel like that's a trend in the NBA, at least nowadays, where if you have locker room problems, it's really easy to blame the coach because it seems like it's an issue that comes from the top down, but it may just be a few players.
No. This is a whole different topic, but real quick. First of all, if there's one player, it's Vucevic. Not to call anyone out, but he's whined since like 2 years ago about coming off the bench. Second, the upper management, like the owners and the CEO, are terrible. They have their hands in their places they should not. But I think that's enough Magic talk. This is going out. This is bad for me. How about we get to the Warrior series?
Let's go Warriors Spurs.
Let's talk about the team that might get swept in Texas. That's not the Mavs.
Who wants to hit it first?
I mean, Kawhi isn't there. I think that summarizes it all. I think like the whole Kawhi thing is just a mess.
Kawhi isn't there. It's that he's in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's a mess.
He's in New York. His uncle is his manager now, and he's outspoken about the fact that Kawhi doesn't feel like there's trust between the Spurs brass and his management team. And if it was just one of his representatives saying that, I would be like, all right, maybe they're just trying to play the media. But it's his uncle. There's a level of duplicity that you can't have in that case, and that's why I feel like the bridge is burned. The first time I heard about the story, I was kind of tilting my head a little bit, saying, "But this is Kawhi. This is the Spurs. This should not be happening." But every single time this story builds, it just feels like it's snowballing to this point where there's no way he's coming back in this season.
Yeah. Like the impression I've got of Kawhi over the years is just like he's basically the next Tim Duncan, right? In terms of like demeanor. He's the perfect representative of the Spurs. He is the Spurs at this point. So for all this to be going down, I can hardly believe it. Like, I feel like they're going to be able to come to a resolution at some point. But I don't know. Like, at this point, it's just gotten worse and worse. And with Kawhi, I think it was just announced like a couple hours ago that he's like officially out for the playoffs now because something about his like team in New York, the doctors not clearing him or something along those lines. Basically,
what I read,
Kawhi's decision.
What I read was that they want him to focus on his rehab completely. How it was worded.
That's West.
They don't want people to be asking them questions basically about if he's coming back. Like, no, he's working out. He's not worried about this playoff series. Which is what solidified it for me that he's gone. I think he's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, keeping him out because at this point it's just a lost season, but still doesn't portend well for the future. As far as the Spurs in general go, though, I'm not like. I think they've made uncharacteristically bad moves with like building the roster. They let go of what Jonathan Simmons and and Dwayne Dedman.
Just to bring Pau Gasol in that horrid contract. That was a horrible
$60 million dollars, and Rudy Gay, but his contract's not so bad. But Rudy Gay over like Jonathan Simmons, come on.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It's I think the best way to put it is what you guys said. It's uncharacteristic for the Spurs. In the same way that Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker coming out and kind of throwing a little bit of shade in a press conference at Kawhi shows me that bridge is burnt. The other side is them trying to get guys like Pau Gasol and Rudy Gay in particular kind of shows me that maybe, this Spurs coaching staff is very much, it has the same calm head on its shoulders, or at least it has the same hierarchy. But I don't know if their personnel decisions show that they're poised to get as lucky as they did getting Kawhi in there in the first place, now that they have to trade.
Yeah, I think what I realized probably is that the Spurs have probably been spoiled since they got Tim Duncan. They've just been able to throw whatever around them and make it work. But without him there, what's his name, LaMarcus Aldridge, just not being that type of guy. He's a little bit more about himself. I think they're going to be in. I would be surprised, depending on how the Kawhi situation plays out. I would be surprised if they don't have a few down years. If it's just decides to hang it up.
Yeah. And speaking of unfortunate circumstances, Donovan Mitchell exited the Jazz Thunder game with pain in his foot. Richie just showed me a tweet. That's really, really unfortunate. I think he was that guy on the Jazz that everybody wanted to see this series.
It's a very NBA thing to happen this season. Everyone wants to see someone, start off something and gone. Like Gordon Hayward 5 minutes into the season.
Yeah.
Mirotic 5 minutes before the season. No one wanted to see him this year.
Yeah.
No, but that's unfortunate. But I still think, well, it gets to the playoffs. I think Donovan Mitchell will be fine. Like, obviously, I don't. Sorry, we have a guest here apparently. No, I don't think anything's gonna be too serious based off my completely uninformed view of that locker room and the X-rays and everything. But I don't know. I think I expected them to lose this one and then win the next one and then take some serious momentum into their home court and actually win the series in 7. But this kind of, if Donovan Mitchell's hurt, it definitely does not help that. You want anything to say, Fazil?
About
or Mike?
The Jazz or
the series.
The series, I was gonna pick the Jazz, but so far, I don't know, the Thunder's big three, I guess mostly Westbrook and Paul George have been going off. Paul George especially. I still don't feel like this game 1 is indicative of how the rest of the series might go, but I guess it's a decent. I mean, can ask for a better start for the Thunder. If Mitchell is out for an extended period of time, though, yeah, this probably goes to 5. But yeah, assuming though Mitchell can be healthy or he isn't hurt too badly, I think the Jazz still have a legitimate shot because I just like the way their team is constructed. I think they can play both ends pretty well, and especially with the Thunder, I think they match up decently enough. I think Thunder probably have a little more star power, but as far as the systems go, especially if you can lock up any one of their stars, then it just starts to go pretty much downhill from there for the Thunder, which I think the Jazz have about as decent a shot as any team of doing.
Yeah. First off, before I get into the Jazz Thunder matchup, I would like to, with a little bit of a grin on my face, a little bit of a smirk, I'd like to note that we kind of just glazed over the Warriors Spurs matchup because I'm pretty sure none of us think that the Spurs are making it out of that.
I mean, it's almost a non-story at this point. The bigger story is what's happening in Kawhi,
Yeah. Yeah, that is the major story. But I also wanted to put that in there because when I go back on YouTube and put the timestamps down, it'll be a good place for me to shift it because I just had to leave and take care of that dog. Um, but to the Thunder and Jazz, I actually have a lot to say about this. First off, if Mitchell is out for any extended period of time, that's a travesty because this.
He just checked in.
Oh,
Oh, he
cool.
did. Okay, so he's in. He's in. But this series has some really nice matchups. I think the biggest one is Gobert and Adams. They're both two of, I think, the most impactful centers in the conference as well as in the NBA, especially in their respective systems. Gobert is transcendent, obviously, but Adams, especially in this system that OKC has been running this year and the last few, since their last year with KD, has really just been glue hands when it comes to the boards. But the other side is this. I think the Thunder are one of those teams that, because they have so many big name players and because the expectations are so high, they're almost a little bit confoundingly underrated. I think Fazal, Richie, and I have talked about. We kind of agree on the fact that Carmelo Anthony is not necessarily the right fit for them, personnel-wise, but I personally am of the opinion that this team could go to the second round and maybe have a decent chance of upsetting another team. But unfortunately, the way that the bracket's laid out right now, and the way that they've kind of been going, I mean, yeah, the Thunder have been playing some good defense near the end of this season, but I don't think that they really have that level of cohesion that they need to make a real run in the West. And having that level of cohesion is necessary against experienced players and superstars like the Warriors have.
No, I agree with you 100%. I was watching Donovan Mitchell there. I know he did come back in, but he was limping the entire time he was out there.
Yeah.
They took him out. He doesn't like he wants to be out, but they took him out.
Yeah, he was like, I'm fine, and he kept saying no, and now he's checking back in. I think that got all of us lucky.
Yeah, I know. Richie was just staring at me with like wide eyes. I was like,
He's gonna be Byron Leftwich in a minute, getting carried up and down the court. But but yeah, I think going back to what you guys were saying, I mean, goes back to my philosophy. I think the Jazz. I picked the Thunder in 6 just because I think, again, Donovan Mitchell, he's the man right now in Utah, and again, this is going to be his lesson. Games, I think the Jazz will put it together at least at home, but I do think the Thunder just have too many players that have been there and lost that are determined to get out of this series. I don't know. You said you looked at my blog earlier, VivsCorner.com, by the way. I picked them to finish second because I thought they might be able to put it together quicker. They obviously had some struggles. I personally wanted to see Carmelo accept the bench role. But what I saw today is the way that they're using their rotations, chance to be the man at some point on the floor. They had a rotation out there where it was just Carmelo with Westbrook and Paul George on the bench. Then they had Paul George in there as the only big guy. And I think that's what's really going to win them this series, at least, because the Jazz don't have that same depth up the firepower, keep up with their firepower.
Definitely. I think most people that were writing about this when the trades happened were noting that the Paul George Westbrook dynamic could be a little more cohesive than the Westbrook KD dynamic near its end, because both of them are very athletic and they excel in transition. Paul George just isn't that same type of shooter. But at the same time, when it comes to defense, Paul George is going to help you so much in the play-by-play of the playoffs, because the up and down motion is slowed so much. There you see so many half-court sets being played, and I do think that the Thunder are going to struggle a lot in their second round matchup. And if they had gotten it together, kind of like what Mike was talking about, earlier in the season, I would say that they have a solid chance of making it to the Western Conference Finals. But unfortunately, with the Rockets and the Warriors both there, I don't think that they will. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say?
No, I'm ready to talk about the poorly named acronym series of Portland, New Orleans, the porno.
I've never heard that one before, Richie. I've never heard that one.
That's from 2K. I remember seeing it where I think it was Robin Lopez was traded, and they put on the thing, it said POR-NO, and it just became hugely popular, and I remember seeing it on there.
Porno Lopez? Porno Lopez.
Yep.
So we saw that game yesterday, I think. Did all of us see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the best one so far outside of Boston.
Definitely. I mean, Rondo had, what?
17 assists.
And played no defense.
I mean, end of third quarter, he had 15. I tweeted something out yesterday that had stats on it. I'll look for that while you guys talk. Causal, I think we should start with you. What do you think is going to be the key dynamic in that series?
The key dynamic is, well, for New Orleans, it's got to be Anthony Davis continues to put out 30 at 12 like he's Shaq. No, seriously, like that's the only thing they've got going for them. Like especially, well, okay, that and Drew Holiday, but
That defense.
yeah, but if Anthony Davis gets locked up at any point, that's it. But I don't know. I can't really see that happening either. So, especially not by the Blazers. But yeah, Drew Holiday's got to continue doing what he's been doing. Like he's been getting better throughout the course of the season, and he's basically playing some of his best basketball right now. Like he's been really good on defense, and on offense he's been more than capable, especially shooting. So that's always good to see. I guess Rondo's been okay. I hate to say that. I guess he's been okay. Like, I mean, the guy could drop 40, and I'll still be, saying empty stats because I'm just that whole Max experience, man. It's ruined him for me. But yeah, I guess like he still has some value, at the very least on offense. Let's see. I'm not sure how Mirotic has been doing recently. Like
he had 16.
Been balling.
All right, so he's been balling. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that was a good move to get him. Really good. So definitely eases some of that pressure off of like the rest of the guys. See if they got it small forward. Like what? Darius.
Which
one more. Okay.
Which is the weirdest thing to hear that sentence. Which one more? Small forward.
Yeah, I've always been accustomed to him as like a 2.
Or a 1.
I think he's been playing well this season, at least on offense. I have not kept up with the Pelicans as much as I should, really, but yeah.
His defensive effort it's a silver lining for me.
Okay.
Especially yesterday. I mean, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but I do feel like him just generally his presence is what allowed them to kind of force McCollum and Lillard into bad shots. I mean, yesterday, I'm looking at the stats right now.
Lillard shot 6 for 23.
6 for 23, 26%. McCollum was 7 for 18, around 39%. But I have stats from before the fourth quarter. Lillard was 4 for 15, that's 26.7%. McCollum was 2 of 9, that's 22%. Evan Turner was their best out of their 1, 2, and 3. He was 5 for 13 at less than 40% field goal percentage, and he had 4 turnovers at the end of 3 quarters. That just kind of is the little snapshot view of what's going wrong for the Blazers at this point. But on the side of the Pelicans, I mean, they only won by 2, but for most of the game, it just seemed like the Blazers got outplayed. And it's a testament to them where in the fourth quarter they were able to bring it back that close. Anthony Davis was 11 for 20 with 9 rebounds. Holiday had 6 rebounds and was shooting 50% at the end of the third quarter. So, I mean, him next to Rondo, he's really figured it out. I'm very surprised about that. Rondo, of course, had 15 assists at the end of the third, 17 at the end of the game, and I concur with Fossil that it sucks to praise him, but I am a fan of his style of playmaking. I just feel when he scores in that type of system, those points are empty. But his assists, I mean, he really gets that team where they need to be, kind of like an experienced version of where I think Lonzo, of the role that Lonzo plays with the Lakers right now. And Mirotic was, I mean, he was just heat yesterday. He had 9 rebounds and he was 6 for 14. He was probably their least efficient guy on the floor last night. I mean, he ended up really far below 50%, but I mean, he's able to get double doubles in the game when Anthony Davis is next to him. I call that a win.
You know why he's playing so well, right? Mirotic? He shaved that beard. He doesn't. He does not look the same. It is so weird for him to be on the court, and I'm like, who is that guy? Like, I've been watching him. Yeah, please don't. No, but McCollum, I think he's honestly the X factor. I'm not a fan of him at all. I don't think he's like a true star like people say he is. You know, people at the beginning of the year were saying, you know, he's a top 25 player, DeMar DeRozan's not, and all that. And clearly that's been dispelled. But I remember, I'm looking at his game log. There were a few of these that stuck out. Like, he took 30 shots against the Bulls, scored 32 points in an insane comeback. He shot 7 of 25 against the Rockets in a 2-point loss. And I think a lot of these were without Lillard, too. Like, when Lillard's gone, I just feel like he's just not remotely the same person. He's an amazing second player. Or second option, excuse me. But not, I would never want to build my team around him. Like, I've seen people say, you know, like, this is before Lillard got absolutely scorching hot a month ago. But I've seen people say, like, hey, maybe you can move Lillard, whatever, which is absolutely absurd. But I think the X factor in the series is how well McCollum plays.
Yeah, actually, I saw an interesting stat like a week or two ago. I forget who tweeted it exactly. I want to say it was Josh Eberly, but I'm not certain. But might have retweeted the guy who tweeted that. But anyway, it was a comparison of McCollum's stats from like I think this season to Ben Gordon's in like 2008, 2009, and they were practically identical, and I could not believe it.
Oh my god, Mike, you were saying something? That was ridiculous. Mike?
Yeah, so I think for me, I was actually doing some research just now. I think Mo Harkless actually could end up being an X factor if he comes back.
That's also true. I like that pick as well.
Like Anthony Davis pretty much just was running all over the place doing whatever he wanted. I think having another guy that's defensively inclined with that kind of length could cause him more problems, can get back out to Mirotic. So it's not just all on Nurkic and Aminu. Because, I mean, right there, Evan Turner's not stopping anybody at the rim. He's not challenging Mirotic or Anthony Davis's jump shots. Mo Harkless can change that, and that puts Evan Turner back in his more natural role of being the sixth man off the bench and running the offense without McCollum and Lillard out there, which then puts them back in their natural positions of dominating the ball. So, and like I think somebody mentioned, Evan Turner had a bunch of turnovers last night. That's part of that, in my opinion.
That's why the Mavs won like 2 weeks ago, because Evan Turner played like crap. Speaking of the Mavs, y'all ready to talk draft?
Let me say one thing beforehand.
Go for it.
So, I do have to agree that Mo Harkless is kind of the X factor. I don't agree that it's CJ McCollum, and here's why, Richie. Looking at the stat sheet and then looking at the game, CJ McCollum is a perfect indicator of why they failed to why they were failing 3 quarters in, right? And what you were saying about him going 7 for 25, like that's just another example of that. I feel like there are very few times where he's the reason why Portland is put on top, and I feel like when that is the case, it's because they have a favorable matchup at the 2. Whereas against the Pelicans, they just don't. I mean, the Pelicans have the size in that case. Or in this case, they have Drew Holiday running at the 2, and Drew Holiday is just going nuts right now. So I don't see that as a favorable matchup. If anything, I think if Dame comes out next game like we think he will, I mean, just showing up and having that I mean, I hate to say it, but having that swag with him, like he owns this series. I mean, he could end up being the reason why this is a close series. But when it comes to the rebounding and the matchups at the 4 and 5, it's going to go to the Pelicans no matter what. I mean, at the end of the day, the Blazers. I saw that too. At the end of the day, the Blazers are going to have to win through their guard play, and that's going to come from game first.
Oh yeah, before you move on to the draft, just one more thing. I feel bad for Yusuf Nurkic. Like, I really do like him as a player. I probably wouldn't want him on the Mavs, but I do like him as a player. Yeah. Really, ever since he left Denver, shoot, he's proven himself to me. Like, as far as like at least being valuable in some sort of capacity. This probably isn't the series for him, though.
Yeah, it's just a bad matchup. Even without DeMarcus, the Pelicans just owned it. AD is so much better than any big that you put in front of him. It's kind of absurd.
I think he would have been a better matchup for Cousins.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better for him to have to chase Cousins around than Davis. Cousins at least wants to bang a little bit. Davis is just going to go around him.
Yep. All right. Do we want to go to the draft?
Cool. I think so. Mike, are you ready to talk draft?
Sure.
Awesome.
All right,
Always.
Let's do it. We went way longer on the playoff predictions than I thought we did. In fact, we went twice as long as I thought we would. So that's fantastic. It's good. It's good to know that my administrative skills are just as great as they have been for the previous 6 episodes, and for Richie's last 3 episodes. It's very consistent. Every time he comes on, we're going 30 minutes longer than. No, it's definitely not that. We go 30 minutes longer than I expect us to. So maybe I should have warned Mike about that. But it's too little, too late now. So you dropped a mock draft this week. I think it was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, on MavsDraft.com, which, by the way, the new site is great.
Thank you.
I dig it. As somebody who is working on fixing up our site at the moment, I definitely like it, especially the mobile view.
Yeah, that was a mess before, so I'm happy I got that fixed.
Yeah, and you're working on SEO, which is dope. But
yeah.
Let's stick to your mock draft, because I feel like there are a few picks there where you really had to think about. So what, Richie, are the picks that you really had to go back and forth?
Dude, this whole draft is like, Mike, I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but after 1 and 2, and maybe 3, I don't know how you feel about Bagley. I think we're going to get to that. But I don't know, like, if you feel the same way. But after 3, I think there's just, like, it's so wide open. Once you get to Jaren Jackson, Michael Porter, Mikal Bridges, Mo Bamba, Trae Young, you know, any of those guys I feel like could go 4. And Colin Sexton. I don't think he'll go 4. But, I mean, he's right there. You know, I think Kevin Knox could really rise with a good workout. Wendell Carter. It's just wide open. And then that's how I felt the whole way after number 2. I had to really think about every single one of them. Like, you know, how badly do they need to reach for this? You know, things like that. And it was really difficult. But the hardest one for me was deciding for the Hawks. Honestly, like at the top at least, was Michael Porter or Jaren Jackson. And I ended up going Porter. I think they need the shooting at the combo 3-4 more. I'm not a big Porter fan, but I think if someone's going to make it work, it's Coach Bud if he stays. Yeah. And they've got, you know, a good foundation next to him that I think he could work there.
I mean, obviously, assuming he doesn't go to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have something to add to that?
I 100% agree. I think Ayton Doncic is pretty locked in, but then from the next 7 or 8 players, I mean, it could go anywhere depending on how a team is feeling. For the Hawks, I personally like Mo Bamba as their pick if he's still there.
We'll get into that. I feel like this is going to get a little bit contentious on Mo Bamba, but I have that set up after we talk about the Mavericks pick. That's going to be fun.
Well, I ultimately went Bagley. I think there's a really good case, in my opinion, for him to be the second most talented player in this draft.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Mavs, I'd be incredibly happy if they got Bagley. He's everything Carlisle wants outside of, you know, the shooting consistency, but, you know, high work ethic. He knows what he's doing. Maybe not a plus on defense, but Carlisle has hidden Dirk for out of 10 years.
Yeah.
I think he'll be okay.
Yeah. It's interesting to me hearing you talk about what was so difficult after 2, because I mean you brought up Kevin Knox 2 episodes ago. The first time we had you on Twitch, I asked you, who do you think is the riser that people aren't talking about? You said Kevin Knox, and now you're saying it again, and it reminds me of the entire Donovan Mitchell situation.
Oh no. Go on.
They may not be comparable in terms of how much they supernova, but he's one of the guys that people aren't looking at with the same eye as maybe they should. But then, obviously, we have Ayton, Doncic, Bagley, Porter, Jackson, Carter, and then some mishmash of Young, Sexton, and the 2 Bridges.
Yeah, and throwing Bomba and all that.
I'm just gonna forget about Bomba. I don't want to think about him right now because we're gonna talk about him for like 15 minutes, and I know it. So I'm just gonna avoid him in my head. But who do you think is the biggest candidate to fall?
Ooh.
From that lottery?
Does Troy Brown qualify? Because I think
I haven't seen him on that many mock drafts.
Okay, then I'm not gonna count him. If I'm just gonna use the 14 that I chose.
Okay.
Oh man, that's difficult. I legitimately can't see any of these people falling. Like I think Bomba to 7 is as far as he's gonna go, maybe 8. And I know Mike, you disagree, but I don't know. This one seems pretty set in stone, which means it's gonna be absolutely wild. Yeah. This NBA season has been just that. I think I'd make the case for Robert Williams. I think his jump shot is coming along, but not as nicely as teams want it to.
Yeah.
And I feel like he disappointed this year as a sophomore. You know, came off the bench a lot of games. I think he would be my choice, but there's really no one I'm like adamant about definitely falling. You know.
Okay. Not even Miles Bridges.
I was thinking about him, but no, I think teams are gonna love him. He's explosive. Could be Harrison Barnes type if he hits.
I mean, if he really works on that post game.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have something to add about the lottery? We'll go into the Mavs fits otherwise.
No, I was looking at it too. I think for me, I've been having trouble figuring out which teams are going to need a point guard. That's why I put kind of Trae Young and Sexton into that maybe potentially could fall type of category. Just depending on how the first, because it's so up in the air with after 2, depending on who picks what, I could see one or both of them falling out of the top 10.
That's fair. Let's go to the Mavericks picks, because in my mind I'm assuming that they're getting the 3rd pick, but they have a really unfortunately good chance of landing around 5, right? So worst case scenario, who do you think is their best fit at the 5th pick?
Well, I'm going to go off of the first 4 I chose. I'm just going to honestly swap, I guess, Orlando and Atlanta and put Dallas at 5 based off what I have.
Okay.
And if Porter goes 4, because I think those same 3 are going the first 3, Bagley, Doncic, and Ayton, I'd say Jaren Jackson. I'm happy with him. I'm not happy with his jump shot necessarily. I think it has room to grow, but he's a high floor guy. He is someone who, if the Mavs get him, I mean, their defense, rebounding, all of that is automatically going to go up.
No, they definitely need that. I mean, last year, I know, I haven't looked at the advanced stats this year, but the Mavs were 22nd in rebounding rate in the NBA.
And they've always been low in that. Like, since without Tyson Chandler, I think in the last 10 years, any non-Tyson Chandler years, so just those 2 years, they've been in the bottom 10, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, or maybe 8 years, something like that, whatever the number is.
And that may not seem like horrendous if you're listening, but just remember that the Mavs offense is predicated on shooting a lot. Like most plays end up in a mid-range or 3, right? Very seldom do they go on the inside, and if they do, it's one of their bigs, most likely, or Dennis Smith. So yeah, we've gotten the 5th, Jaren Jackson. I like that. I'm a Michigan State fan. My dad was an alum, so it kind of warms my heart to see Jaren Jackson right there on draft boards. And you know what? If the Mavs got him, that'd be great. But what if they landed at 3?
Bagley. That's who I put there. Yeah. It's Bagley, and I don't look back. I don't know about you, Mike. Where's the earliest you would take like, who would you take at 3? Would you even consider Bamba at 3? I know you don't want to get there yet,
No,
but I really want to know.
It's the very next
yeah,
topic.
I was gonna say try not to dig too deep into the Bama situation. Actually, I had to do a blind ranking because I'm super biased on a lot of guys. My blind ranking definitely put Bagley as the top big man available at 3. So I would not complain or cry about Bagley being a pick at 3 at all.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad we agree on that.
We definitely need a big man for the same exact reasons that you just mentioned. I would love to be able to grab a rebound or 2 here and there. And if we can block a shot also, that would be great.
Yeah, that's somewhere Bagley's not gonna, do a ton, but his effort alone could maybe get some blocks there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Is it Bamba time?
Yeah, let's go Bamba time.
All right, so I'll lead this one. I guess, Mike. So my question is, what makes you like? What's your ranking on Bamba? Where do you have him on your board?
Well, for the Mavs, I'm number 3 behind Bagley and Ayton.
Okay, so you think he's Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say I personally think this is gonna sound weird, but I almost don't want us to get the 3rd pick. I want Bagley gone. I want Bagley off the board. I want us to be choosing between Jackson and Mo Bamba. I actually graded those 2. Actually, almost exactly even floor and ceiling. I think they're both going to block shots. They're both going to improve the defense. I just love Bamba. Like when I watched Rudy Gobert out here a while ago, knowing that those spots where they're just leaving him by himself, that Bamba can maybe knock that jump shot down. Like that excites me.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can hit an occasional one. I just worry about, he didn't hit too many, and the free throw percentage, was really poor. I thought, the 3-point percentage was poor. The free throw percentage was like below average. I wouldn't say poor, but my worry with him is is that can he defend without fouling, and then how much of a rim protector can he come? Like right away, I don't think he's necessarily going to be great for the Mavs, and I don't think that fits their timeline. I think a team like Chicago that may not be in a rush could definitely take him, because 3 years from now, you're looking at a guy who could really be an automatic starter. I'm just not sure about year 1 and year 2, and I think that's why we disagree on that. Like, how do you see him being at the beginning of his career?
Yeah, so that's exactly, I think, what our difference is there. I'm very patient. I would not be surprised if he comes in and has a ton of foul trouble early on, just because he's a rookie. He's not going to get that respect immediately. But just knowing that his work ethic and seeing, that was one of the things I watched for the first time I watched him. He's smart. He knows how to stay out of the way. But if you watch the NCAA tournament game, that last play he fouled out on, it was a clean block, but it didn't look like a clean block to the naked eye. And I think he's going to struggle with that in his first couple of years, those types of situations. The other things that people worry about are his body. I just look at his shoulders, and I believe he's going to fill out pretty well. As far as the shot, his form is good when he's set and relaxed.
Yep.
Free throw, it's actually the length of his arms, I think, is the problem there. It's just going to be
I agree with that.
And then from there,
I think
just knowing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Final thought. Just knowing his level of work, and just imagining him coming into the Mavs situation, Dirk's last year, I think he's going to spend a lot of time with Dirk working on that jump shot if he comes to the Mavs. And that's the big X factor for him. Like, if he can be a rim protector and make jump shots, it's going to be pretty. I'm not saying he's going to be Anthony Davis, but he'll be a notch below as far as being able to do everything.
Okay. Yeah, I think I actually remember seeing this last week. I watched a game of Bamba. I want to say it was against Oklahoma State or Texas Tech. It was one of those two, and it was one of the rare times he put the ball on the floor, and it was like a negative and a positive at the same time. He doesn't put the ball on the floor often, which is worrisome. But when he did, his handles actually looked really quick, which was kind of surprising and I think, in a positive way. But I wonder how consistently he can do that. Can he ever put the ball on the floor, get a few assists every once in a while? Not necessarily average a few assists, but I want to see him, work in an open court, just ball handling. And sadly, I don't have access to the workout, so it's gonna be hard to gauge that. But I'm sure that's something scouts are gonna be looking at.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
I got to hear most of what you were saying, Mike, and I do generally lean on the side of Richie under the Bamba case. I think the caveat for me is a year or two with an NBA training staff is going to do that man wonders.
Yeah, I agree.
Everything that I've seen from him, because since the start of the NCAA season, I don't follow the games as much as Richie does, but I do keep tabs on at least the lottery prospects because I want my eye test to develop. Because if I do eventually release a big board, or if the Mavs get a specific guy, I want to know how he's changed over the course of the year. Bamba is impressive in that he knows how to use his size pretty well. But the issue comes down to, I think, the foul trouble issue. He's a good defender, but I don't know how well it's going to translate in his rookie or sophomore season when he hasn't built up his body the way that, let's say, Ayton has already. And I think that's really going to be the caveat for him. And then there's the question of offense. I mean, is he going to be able to function in that Dwight Powell role man role? I mean, a little repetitive, but it's the question for the Mavs at least of whether he's going to have an immediate impact, and I just don't think that he will have that immediate impact. But I can't knock your evaluation because, like you said at the top of the podcast, you're looking at them in terms of where they're going to be 5 years from now, and that's just as accurate, I would say.
And I think it's so hard to figure out, differentiating how good are they now and how good will they be. I think that's one of the hardest things, especially when you're just watching a game. I think that's one of the absolute hardest things. I see how he could be good now a little bit, but I mostly see how he'll be good. And the reason I say, I'm lower on him for the Mavs is because I just see the Mavs doing big things this summer. Donnie's saying we're ready to compete next year. Yeah. And if they're serious with that, I don't see Bamba as a fit, which is sad that they'd go short-sighted because I think that's always a mistake. But that's just why I have him so low.
And I 100% respect that. And that's why I said that I think the Bulls are going to have the draft that I would have liked to have had this year. I believe that. I thought the Pelicans pick was going to be a little lower. I thought they were going to get if they had gotten Mo and then a Kyrie Thomas, and he may still be there when they pick. But that's a ridiculous draft. Kyrie Thomas is one of my sleepers.
Dude, I love Kyrie. I love him. I'm glad we agree on him too. He's so quick.
I have not seen much of him. That is the one striking thing.
Where do you pick that if you can?
Yeah, I have him going the first pick after the lottery. I have him to Washington.
Okay. Damn,
that's giving them too much credit.
He's going to Washington.
That's giving him too much credit, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's probably you had him up there on your board and didn't want to skip him too much. But yeah, if he goes and kills it in workouts, which is possible, I think he shot something ridiculous from three to 48% or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over here. Yeah, 40% from three. And then I think I saw a stat that he's 78% or something ridiculous at the rim. And then he's a lockdown defender.
Yep. And he's really fast. I mean, can't even understate that.
Yeah.
Three with a long wingspan. Yeah. It reminds me of somebody I just finished watching on TV a minute ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Briefly going back to Bamba, because I actually do want to direct the conversation a little bit with Richie. And Mike, feel free to chip in. So the wingspan, the wingspan argument in terms of BPA, best player available, is really interesting to me because a lot of times players that are really heavily touted, who have great physical profiles, like really unique ones, like long wingspans, or are absurdly tall, or have very low body fat percentage, or are well built for their age. Those players tend to catch my eye because that eliminates one of the big transitions going to the NBA. So I talked about the training and the conditioning thing with Bamba, but how do you think he affects the personnel side? If the Mavs were to draft him at whatever pick that they have, would they need to surround him like the Rockets surround Capella with shooters all over so that they can play to his strength? Or do you think that they're going to have to develop him and help him really become a potent offensive threat to fit within their system?
I'm not gonna lie, I'd like to delegate this response to Mike. Yeah.
All right. So, are you asking? Do I think he can become like a post threat, like on the block with the ball?
Essentially, yeah. Do you think that the Mavs are going to have to change their team building philosophy, or do you think they're going to have to, if they draft him, do you think that they're going to have to acquire talent to fit around him, or do you think that their goal is going to be to develop him to become a post scorer?
So basically, it's going to be him and Dennis Smith in the future, if they take it. So immediately I think he can be, like you said, a Clint Capella, Tyson Chandler. Like he's gonna be immediately year one, year two, a role player. He's gonna block shots. He's gonna catch fouls. I do think that we can develop him into a guy that can be that second option potentially. It's gonna come down to what happens with him physically, like you mentioned. Right now, like one of the things that I am a little bit concerned about is that he does work down low, but because of how slight he is, he gets pushed around a good bit when he's actually trying to go through somebody. Like he's not going to move Dwight Howard off the block, which is where, again, his jump shot and athleticism is going to come in as well. Maybe he doesn't have to put on that weight if he's a knockdown jump shooter, or he can pump fake and put the ball on the floor. He's going to be a very interesting case. Again, I'm biased with as far as running him on the Mavs. I wouldn't be mad if we went another direction just because of that fact that we don't exactly know what his offensive game is going to be and if he's going to be able to be the number two guy.
Definitely.
But yeah, that he could go one of two ways in that regard.
Yeah. And though I am on, I would say, the other side of really being in favor of Bamba, I'm kind of lukewarm on him. I cannot deny his natural talent as well as where his ceiling could be. It's just the lottery, especially the top 5, are so jam-packed full of really amazing physical profiles and guys that have the potential to do incredible things in the league that I really can't. It's very difficult for me to look that far in the future and try to project, at least, because I don't know how he's going to be when you have, like you said, Dwight Howard defending him. I don't know how he's going to develop, how that's going to work in 2 or 3 years. However, final question on Bamba I have for Richie is his shot mechanics.
Personally, like, this is a personal bias. I'm not a fan of shooting at the side, kind of like he does.
Yeah.
But I think some guys can make it work, especially big men who they don't need as much lift necessarily to get their shot off. I think his can work. My issue with it is that it's kind of slow to some extent, and it feels like he's just winding up to release it, not necessarily always shoot it. That's the vibe I got, I guess, from watching it, is that it may not be as comfortable as it could be.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone's form gets tweaked a little bit as they enter the NBA. I think he'll benefit a lot from that. And with the same way De'Aaron Fox kind of benefited from, you could tell he gained strength. His jump shot got better. He shot the same percentage as Lonzo. Big baller people won't want you to hear that. But the leg strength, the lower body strength really plays a role in that, which is the same reason I think Bagley is going to be a better jump shooter. But the same thing goes for Bamba. If he gets more strength, I think he's really going to benefit just in every way. I mean, obviously, on defense, like he can guard 1 through 5 already on pick and rolls and everything.
Right.
He'll be better at that. But I think his jump shot specifically, like it'll come more easily with strength.
All right. Well, that's really fair. Obviously, on your tangent, I don't know how many big baller fans are listening or
Hope-
watching this
hope-
podcast in the
hopefully
future
zero.
or now.
We can keep that number at 0.
Yeah, it just strikes me as not a great fit. At least the way we talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so going on to our next comparison, we did spend a good chunk of time on Bamba, but I feel like it was needed. We came to a decent conclusion. Jaren Jackson versus Wendell Carter.
Mike, you want to go first?
Oh man, you put me on the spot. All right.
I'll go first if you don't want to. I mean,
So first thing I want to ask is, do we know what Carter's doing yet? Because I know the last thing I saw was that
He's
his mom
still on
doesn't
the
want him to
fence.
come out. Okay.
yeah, still on the fence.
As far as those
That's
two,
weird.
for the Mavs, personally, I would prefer Jackson if we're choosing between those two. Just because, like Richie said, he's a shot blocker. And he's going to work hard on the glass just automatically. I think Carter's more of a verticality guy when it comes to defense. He's smart, but he's not necessarily like going to like smack somebody's stuff off the glass and whatnot.
I guess he's more like
Staying
Tyson
around.
Chandler in that regard.
Potentially, like I'm trying to think of a better. I think I'm comparing him to Andre Drummond.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
with,
because
with his head more on straight.
Exactly. Exactly. So, like, I think he did get outshone, whatever the word you would use there is, by Bagley a lot. I would be not beside Bagley for a year, which is why I'm not mad at him considering going back. But yeah, I don't think he's that explosive guy that's chasing people to track down blocks and stuff like that. That's not happening. Where Jackson's going to be getting a lot of those. He reminds me of like what could be a better version of Ibaka, Jaren Jackson.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think you said it best. I mean, I have this exact same comparison for Jackson. You know, it's sometimes the simplest one is the best answer. You know, and I think that's really true for Jaren Jackson. You know, Wendell, though, you said Drummond. Wendell is averaging per 40 minutes, he got 13.5 rebounds, which is just absolutely absurd. Yeah, it is crazy. So he's really good with that. And you said it best. Verticality is going to be Carter's thing. You know, Jackson may chase you out on the perimeter more and give you hell, but if you challenge Carter down low, you're not going to win it that many times. Same with Jackson. I think Carter, though, needs to play above the rim. I don't think he'd benefit really from going back to school just because, you know, how do you say, is it Zion or Zion?
Zion.
It is Zion. Okay, so I think Zion's going to take a lot of focus off him, which could be good and bad, and same with Barrett and same with Reddish. I just think if Bagley took away some of that from him, and Allen, because Grayson Allen was a ball stopper, then I think he's going to be even worse with that next core. I think he should come out no matter what. It'd be a terrible decision to pass up on, first of all, the money, and second of all, the opportunity. Like, you never know. Like, you could have a terrible injury, God forbid. Yeah, and you never know. You always take the guaranteed money. But I love Carter. I think he's got a high floor. I think if the Mavs, thank God they didn't win like 3 more games, I would have been okay with him, but he's just not the guy you tank for. Jackson could definitely be the guy you tank for. He can do everything on defense, like absolutely everything.
Awesome.
Just weighing in between Jackson and Carter. Well, I think it's not really much of a question for me. I don't know as much as Richie or Mike, but I'd still, as far as what I do know, I'd still take Jackson. I definitely do like Carter. I think if we were picking at 6 or, well, I don't know, 6, but 7 or 8, he'd be a worthy pick. I think he's going to be a good player. Personally, and I mean, I didn't get to watch a whole lot of him. I don't have the most, I don't have as good evaluation skills as either of you in the first place, but like, and I haven't watched him as much, but I don't know, just like kind of hearing what everybody's been saying about him. I've personally, in my head, been thinking of him as like sort of an Al Horford type of player, on offense at least, because I hear he's got good passing skills, right? So that's probably one of the more intriguing things about him.
I remember the first. Yeah, he's always like the second he catches it, his eyes are up. He's scanning the floor like from the post and everything. It's very Al Horford-esque, like the ultra utility guy, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like you said, he's a safe guy. He's a high floor guy. I think he kind of is what he is, and I think that's why you don't, like you said, you don't tank for a guy like that.
Yeah.
Like he's got a few post moves. He's got strong hands. He's gonna be I think a starting type center for a long time. I don't think he's a superstar. I think he can get to that, like I said, Andre Drummond floor where he's like a borderline all star depending on the situation. Just because he's gonna,
he's
like you said, rebound and get the easy buckets. Yep.
That's definitely. I haven't watched that much Wendell Carter to the point where I could really talk about him, but I have watched a lot of Jaren Jackson just because Michigan State. I could talk about Bridges as well. I mean, the other Bridges, obviously. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is definitely the prospect that has me a little more excited, just because I feel like his ceiling is a little higher. Richie and I were talking earlier, way before the podcast, about his shot. I mean, I don't know if you already brought it up, but that push shot is kind of. I noticed that as well, and I feel like maybe in the NBA it's gonna hurt his accuracy. He probably won't be nearly as efficient. But depending on who picks him up, if it ends up being the Mavs, I feel like he's going to be used very particularly, and I feel like his development is going to be really well suited, especially right next to Harrison Barnes, especially when Noel is gone. It's going to be great.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And then,
let's go to. Sorry?
I was going to just add one last thing about Jackson. From a fit standpoint, I think he fits as well because he's got a bunch of young athletic guys running around. I mean, they're going to be exciting to watch if we get a guy like Jackson.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I totally agree. And that's what's exciting about him to me. Even if the Mavs fall to 5, I can't be super depressed about it because there are still a lot of good players that I feel are pretty decent fits. And in the case of Jackson, I think it's a good fit. Moving on to our last comparison, Colin Sexton versus Trae Young. Richie, why don't we give the Trae Young bucket over to you?
Well, let me first ask Mike, who do you have higher, Trae Young or Sexton, and where do you have both of them on your board?
So, I'm definitely a Colin Sexton type of point guard guy, but I actually do have Young higher.
Where do you have him?
Overall, I have him. I have him 4th highest ceiling, and it's going to depend on where he goes.
And that's Trae Young, you said?
Yep.
What about Sexton?
And the difference is not that great, but
Mike, you just cut out for a little bit.
Which part did you miss?
Oh, after you said that you have Trae Young at 4th highest ceiling.
Yep.
And at 6. Is for me, if Trae Young goes to a team where he gets to run and he has a shooter on the wing and he has a guy that can catch lobs or down low, he's going to be very scary proposition. I think one part of his game that's underrated is his passing.
Yep.
I watched him play I think he averaged like 8 assists or something like that, maybe. He usually has 15 if his teammates had scored. Diamond. Like he scored a lot of points out of necessity. If he was on a team where he didn't have to, he would. But he wants to set guys up. He wants to get the offense moving, and that's what I think makes him a scary proposition. Ball. Atlanta, if they're willing to move on from Dennis, that would be an interesting fit for me.
That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder about both their fits with Dennis. I know Sexton's like no-brainer. They don't fit at all. I mean, my comparison for Sexton is Dennis Smith. I think they're pretty similar players. But I think Trae Young could work in a 2-guard system. I don't think Sexton could as much, unless he's used just for scoring. But again, that's kind of Dennis Smith would overlap with him.
I wholeheartedly agree.
My worry with Young is while he's got quickness, he's got a quick first step, is that I don't think he can finish at the rim as easily as Sexton will. I mean, he's got shorter arms. I don't think he's got the touch Sexton has, and the dunking, the athleticism. Excuse me. I think that's like the biggest difference between them is just how much their first of all defense is, and then also the finishing at the rim. I think that's going to be what really defines Sexton and Young. Like, 'cause they're going to be compared to each other all their career.
Definitely. Assessment as well. And that's why I think if he goes to the wrong team, it could end poorly for him. Tyus Jones situation.
Yeah. See, so I went to see Colin Sexton in an LSU in January, and Tremont Waters, right?
You said Tremont Waters?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
I think we cut out for a second, but I'm gonna assume Tremont Waters because you're an SEC fan. So I remember he just absolutely got in Tremont Waters' head, and this is in LSU, and he just made him commit. Like, Tremont Waters was having a great game. I think he had like 14 and 4 or something in the first half, and then just at the final 3 minutes, Sexton just got in his head, and there were 3 straight turnovers, and Alabama just took momentum. Like, he's so smart. He's already got the veteran presence of getting in people's heads. And he's explosive. He can explode to the basket. He can hang with anyone. I think honestly, like, I'd love to see him in Cleveland with LeBron. I think that would be
Sexton.
Yeah, as much as they need Trae Young there, I'd love to see, like, out of just personal preference, I'd love to see Sexton in Cleveland.
I mean,
honestly both.
I think Mike is back at least. Because Mike is, no pun intended. But that's where I was going with Trae Young next. I feel like Cleveland is going to pick him up if he drops that low. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that in terms of fit, purely in terms of fit, because I don't think he's going. Excuse me. I don't think he's going in the top 6, I would say. But he would. I feel like he would fit well in a 2-guard system. Even though Sacramento has Buddy Hield, Richie and I were talking about it earlier. I think he could fit next to De'Aaron Fox. I think personnel-wise that could work. But in terms of the talent that they have right now, I mean, they're not going to go ahead with it. However, that does kind of narrow it down for me to where what teams would like to have him, where he fits, and if he drops, which I don't think any of us think is going to happen, where he could go. But I do think that Cleveland is the best position for him to be in because of the fact that he's surrounded by shooters. I mean, LeBron is already, going back towards what Mike said about him, they do already have LeBron doing the playmaking in that sense, and he's surrounded by shooters like that. So Trae could get a lot of run as with the bench rotation, I would say, especially if they stick with the shooters. If LeBron stays with, I think he will. But in terms of personnel, I feel like best player available and fit really lines up right at the cross section of where Cleveland's Nets pick is going to land.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my pick for him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Basil, you got anything more?
Personally, yeah, I'm also the sort of, I also like the what's his face, Colin Sexton type of point guards over like Trae Young. Just I don't know what it is, like Trae Young, like I'm not a fan of the whole Curry imitation thing. Not because I dislike that style of play. I just don't think that anybody's really gonna like match Curry to that extent, really. And I mean, I get the argument, that it's not about matching Curry with those sorts of players. It's just about, even coming close is going to be really good. And understand that. I think Trae Young's going to be, I bet on him being a good player. I don't think he's going to be a bust. But I just think that guys like, DSJ and Sexton are kind of like dynamic in that sort of way that you can't really have with, those 3-point shooting guys, which, I mean, look, Curry's like an extreme example, which he's dynamic because he's just like the best ever. But Yeah, and I think like Trey Young, his shooting will translate pretty well. Um, I do have concerns about how he'll like live up to NBA type pressure. Um, as far as it goes, like as far as who gets drafted first, I think it's probably going to be Trey Young.
Do you
But
think that's purely off of hype though, or do you think he's who teams are putting as the best player?
it's probably a little bit of hype, but I think like in terms of like who is picking, that's just what I'm basing that off of. Like in terms of what exactly they need and what if any team is picking for a point guard, like what they would need from that point guard.
Right.
I think that's sort of the league is probably trending towards like that whole Trey Young, Steph Curry, whatever skill set. But I think Colin Sexton will do about as well. Like it's going to be hard to say for I guess the first year or so, but
Yeah.
we should see by I suppose the time their rookie contracts are up.
Yeah, and I mean we could be way off in terms of fit. Like certain coaches, certain systems could find a way to incorporate Trey Young to where him shooting a ton and maybe not being super efficient with it doesn't destroy the team. Um, but I think generally, just looking at him as a prospect, not associating him with the team, I actually kind of disagree with Foster. Where him him shooting in that volume, trying to imitate Curry, like you said, I feel like that's a little bit of a detriment because Curry is transcendent. I said it right that time. Curry is transcendent because he is so ridiculously efficient. He gets it off so quick, and he can shoot in a volume that nobody else can. Right? That's why people call him the best shooter the game has ever seen, and don't get laughed out of well off of the internet. And him being there helps their team so much because their system, the opponent's defensive system can't try to run him off the 3 point line because if his defender is off of him at all, I mean that shot is going to go in like that. And I don't see Trey Young having that level of effect. And so if a team is drafting him, hoping that he has that effect on defenses, I think unfortunately, at least in his rookie, sophomore, and probably even his third year, he's not going to have that effect. I do believe, however, that he could have a Curry-like development curve where his shooting becomes a lot better after 3 or 4 years in the league. I mean, I hope he doesn't have the Curry injury plague. His ankles don't seem to be that bad, but I mean, we'll see. He is pretty highly touted. I remember Curry being really highly touted out of Davidson. Maybe not as much hype surrounding him like Trey Young does, but I think that has to do with Davidson.
Right.
I think it has to do with Trey Young's hype has to do with Steph. Period. And I actually went into my first Trey Young game expecting to hate him, and he changed my mind. Just when I realized that he's a volume shooter, but out of necessity. I don't think that's who he is as a player. It's how he got noticed, obviously. That's probably why he was not as highly touted coming out of high school as his performance seemed to indicate he should have been. I think I saw a stat. I hate quoting stats that I'm not 100% sure on. I feel like he was double teamed like on 70% of their possessions or something ridiculous. Games, I feel like there was one game where he took like 2 shots in the first half. And his team was getting destroyed. And so in the second half, he comes out and he's shooting from half court and stuff like that. But he got them back in the game. For him, it's gonna come down to a fit. If he goes to a team like Orlando or something he needs to go to a team where he's expected to be the secondary scorer versus being the guy that's gonna carry the team. If he's in that situation, then he'll flourish. If he's put in a situation like he was in Oklahoma, where he's expected to come in and be Steph Curry, then I think that's gonna hurt him. Meanwhile, Sexton is the safe. He's a floor general. He's what you look for in a point guard. He's in a guard. Potentially can switch out on a 2. He's a leader. And But again, he's going to come down. It's just going to come down to necessity as far as where he goes.
Okay.
My opinion.
Before we move to Richie's second round picks, Mike, I gotta ask. Obviously, I've kind of been leaning on your eye test being qualified for projections like 5 years down the road. Where do you think Trae Young is going to be that far down the road? I mean, you did say that you think he's going to be the guy that you look to as your 1B or 2 going into the draft. But do you think he can be a team's best player at his peak in the league?
Man, not a great team.
Okay.
I don't think he's gonna be the type of guy who's gonna like carry a team like on his back. I think he needs a secondary guy to flourish.
Okay.
It could be another guard. I think preferably I would want him with a good big man, like him and Anthony Davis type of situation would be ridiculous.
I wish they had a pick to do that.
Right.
Exactly. They traded that away.
Yeah, as far as things go, like a team, I would like to see Trae Young actually go to the Knicks because I really kind of buy into the idea. Okay, so on the one hand, I think it's a little too soon to just say Frank is not ever going to be like the primary ball handler, the initiator, and I see a lot of people who are saying, hey, just move him to the 2 full time, and he can be the secondary dude, playmaker, and he can be just that sort of 3-and-D guy who can make good passes. I think it's a little too soon to say that because he's so young, but if you did pair him with Trae Young and you have Porzingis and hopefully a bunch of other good players, if the Knicks can really build a team, I'm not certain about that. They can find a good coach, I'm not certain about that either. But if those two things are true, and given what they already have, they already have that big man, they already have that secondary ball handler at least to take off some of that pressure. I think that's a good environment for Trae Young.
I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
Yeah, that's like the perfect fit. I mean, Porzingis is still the man, and he can show up, help Porzingis get better, and take some scoring load off of him.
I mean, we saw. Keep blanking on the name every single time I bring him up. I brought him up yesterday. Who's the guy from Utah that was traded?
Utah to New York.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant University of Utah. That threw me off like no other. Traded from Utah to New York.
Trey Burke.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Like he's been cooking. Like he was cooking.
It's because he looks like Allen Iverson.
Yeah, he got the cornrows and everything done this year. But I think that's the prototype for if Trae goes to New York, how he can be super successful.
Yeah.
Maybe not the inside game as of yet. I haven't seen as much of that from him. But I think he could definitely dial the playmaking up a little notch, kind of going off of what Mike said. And the shooting could definitely be weaponized over his rookie year. So yeah, I do think it's exciting. I also think that he's a little overrated, and it sucks that I have to say that.
It's ESPN's fault.
Honestly,
no, it is. There were games where like he would be on the bench for like 10 minutes. Not 10, like 5 minutes because he didn't get more than that. Like against Alabama, the whole game, Colin Sexton outplayed him. Trae Young is on the bench, and they're like, "Here, but look how great Trae Young is." And like, it was the worst thing. I don't get it.
Like Bob on the screen.
Yeah, it was. So...
ESPN has gotten to the point where their first real Luka Doncic. Okay, their first real Doncic piece came out like 2 days ago, and they just had the author of that article on the jump, I think on Friday, and that's the first time they've talked about it. Whereas most people who have their ear to the ground about these things have known Ayton, Doncic, Bagley, Porter.
Oh yeah.
For probably close to.
Well, Doncic hasn't been on any ESPN games. I think that's why. I think it's simple as that.
That is a good point. I just figured that they would be talking about the draft a little longer because of how profitable Lonzo was last year. I just figured that would open the door for them, like, hey, maybe it's a good idea.
I just got one last thing before we move on to the last part of this. Trey Young's field goal percentage at the rim was 53.5%.
But what was the volume?
Not sure. You know what? I will pull that up. Give me 1 second.
But make your point.
And Colin Sexton's was at 62.2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite the difference. Sexton took 35.6% of his shots at the rim, and Trey Young took about the same, 32.7.
Okay.
So that's something that's like huge for me. That's why one of my biggest things is how well can they finish at the rim, especially for a guard. I think that is the most like important trait that you can find out of college, besides shooting, obviously. And that's why I have Sexton above Young. That's my reasoning.
But maybe that's another case to go with what Mike said, that Trey Young would fit really well with the big, because maybe that would get him maybe 3 or 4 open looks in a game, and that might account for that difference in percentage.
Right.
Because the volume is so similar.
Mm-hmm.
But if nobody has anything else to say, we should move on to the second round.
Sure. All right. So I was thinking for this one, Mike, I'm assuming you have some second round sleepers as well, right?
Of course.
All right. You want to do some rapid fire where we just do like 30 seconds to a minute each, just saying like, we'll pick out 3 or 4 sleepers and just say like, hey, here's why I like them.
You can go
You
first.
good with that? All right, I'll do it. So I'm gonna start off, and I'll do Robert Franks from Washington State. He's 6'7", he's a junior. He was the most improved player from the Pac-12 this year. He won that. I think his stats this year, he averaged something like 21 points per game. Jumped from, I actually have it out in front of me. That is not Robert Franks. That is Robert Williams. Excuse me. That's quite the difference. Yeah, he jumped to 17 points per game from 6th. Improves the field goal percentage. He shot 40% from 3. His free throw percentage went to 85%. He went up with, he already declared with an agent. I think he'd be a great look at 54. He doesn't play much defense, which is an issue, but he's got long arms. Maybe he just wanted to focus on scoring. I think he's a real sleeper. What about you, Mike?
My first one's probably going to be Shake Milton. He's a kind of a small guy as far as his frame. But and I want to scout him a little bit more before I fully commit to that. But man, let me pull up his stuff real quick so I can speak with confidence. He shot 43% from 3. He's got a nice floater. He's a scorer basically. His length will allow him to. He's calm, cool, and collected, so I think he's going to be able to come in and have an immediate impact. I think he's a 6-man type with the potential in the right situation to be a starter at some point down the road.
I agree with that. My only knock with Milton, this is why I had him sliding to the very last pick of the first, was he had a really low field goal percentage at the rim. The only one who had a lower one was Devontae Graham. But I mean, he also had limited shots at the rim, so maybe that's misleading. I'd say my next one would be, man, it's tough. I'd say Mustafa Heron. He also declared with an agent. I've been high on him since high school. I loved what he brought. I feel like he has a really high IQ. He's always doing the little things, I guess, that show up in the box score, as generic as that is. But he's calling out, where everyone's going. He reads plays. I think he's got tremendous 3-and-D upside. Although his 3-point percentage this year wasn't so hot, his form is far from broken, and I think he's going to potentially be a 3-and-D wing one day in this league. Hopefully the Mavs could snag him up. I'd love that. I know I don't know how you feel about Heron since Auburn is in the SEC, but
I personally haven't paid a ton of attention to Mustafa. Just because I didn't realize he was an NBA prospect initially, and whatnot. But he's another guy I want to spend a little bit more time with. My second sleeper is actually going to be Gary Trent. I think I saw you had him middle of the second round.
Very beginning, yeah, like 5 picks in.
Okay, so I think he's a guy that's going to get buckets. I think he shot 45% from 3 or something like that.
Yeah,
but he's not just a 3-point shooter. I think he's a scorer. He gets inside. He can finish in the mid range. He puts the ball on the floor. He's got decent handles to get inside. And I don't know. I don't think he's going to be a star at any point, but I think he can be your number 2 scorer down the road for a good team.
Nice, yeah. He's definitely a sleeper too, because I know a lot of people have him going anywhere from 40 to in the top 20, and I just have no idea how to gauge him at all. Like I feel like that's half the class. My other one would be, I guess this counts as a sleeper, is Admiral Schofield from Tennessee. I keep going with these SEC guys. But no, he's got. I mean, he is built, and his name's Admiral. Like, what's there not to like? No, but I like him a lot. You know, he's got. I think he's got a good shot. He has a high release. Could be prettier, but I have him going 37 actually, 2 picks after Trent, to the Kings. And I love him as a wing. You know, he can play. I feel like he can play the 2, 3, or the 4. He's a monster defender, and you know he's strong as hell. So like he can dominate on both ends.
From what I'm seeing,
I like him a lot too.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, obviously started, but a junior who his minutes basically increased year after year, and he kept his efficiency essentially the same. I mean, that is genuinely impressive.
Let me see.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, you have one more?
One more? Ooh, all right. So I was gonna go with either Jalen Brunson but I'm gonna go with Spy McKillop because I think he's a guy that the Mavs should look at in the second round. I think a lot of people look at him as maybe just a shooter. See him as a much more. I think he's another guy that shot 45% from 3. I think he can create his own shot. He's 6'8", so he can shoot over smaller defenders. But the thing that makes him a sleeper in my eyes is his activity. Or he's the type of guy that's going to get loose balls. He's going to deflect passes. He's maybe not a great defender, but he has active feet and active hands on the defensive side of the ball, which is what's going to allow him to stay on the floor versus a guy that can just shoot the ball a little bit. So I think he's a guy to watch out for.
Yeah, I have both of those a lot higher. I feel like the most. I think Svi is my number 30 prospect or something like that. And then Brunson, I mean, I feel like last year, you know, we agreed a lot on Thornwell. I think Brunson is going to be one of those guys that just, he doesn't have a glaring flaw in his game, you know? Like, he's not the most athletic, and he's kind of undersized at 6'2 or 6'3, but with short arms. But he's also one of the smartest players. I mean, Jay Wright said he's the most mature person on the team, including Coach Jay Wright. So that goes a long way. I think he's going to be someone who sticks around in the league for like 15 years or something, like kind of like a Jameer Nelson, like, you know, one-time All-Star, but never, you forget he's an All-Star. Yeah. But he's also really good and bounces around the league at the end because, I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad we agree on both of those. I like Svi a lot, and Kansas kind of hit him.
Yeah. And if I could just add a little bit to Brunson, I'll say just as one quick note, I'll put him like I like the comparison you made. I think his ceiling could maybe perfect scenario, everything works out for him. I think he could be a Kyle Lowry type.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Actually bigger than Kyle Lowry.
On Sports Reference for each of the prospects you guys were talking about, because I just didn't know that many of them. I mean, I knew Gary Trent Jr. I knew a couple of them, but the one that stood out to me was Admiral Schofield. And I just generally am. Oh, and I forget his name now, but there was one guy that you were talking about who was 6'6", who has a 7'0" wingspan.
Yeah, Robert Franks.
Yes, Robert Franks. That physically is just impressive to me, and his numbers are pretty decent too. But when it comes to second round picks, what I'm generally impressed by is if I see somebody's been on their college team for 2 years or 3 years, and either their minutes go way up in their final year, or their efficiency goes way up with similar usage rates. I mean, those are things that remind me of people like Jay Crowder, like Draymond Green, even though he was a little better known. when I'm looking for underrated sleeper guys, or when I'm evaluating people that Richie gives me, that's more realistic. That's really what stands out to me, and I really hope that one of those guys, out of the last three that you guys brought up, and finds his way onto the Legends next year. I think that'll be very interesting. I mean, we saw it this year with how well the Legends have played. Motley, of course, going kind of crazy in the last few games of the season. But I do think as the NCAA corruption scandal gets a little, it kind of just grows bigger and bigger every single year. I think it's going to start snowballing. We're going to see a lot more of these types of players in the G League, and it's going to matter even more that NBA teams take a chance on them.
Yep.
So that's why I felt like it was important to talk about them. And you guys gave me some really nice names. Puzzle.
Shoot, what exactly are we talking about?
Second round sleepers. Your facial expression, dude. You were zoning out. Hey, this Minnesota Houston game was really interesting.
Yeah, that's honestly what I was focused on a little more.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow, I knew. I play a lot of 2K, like the my league mode where you can import draft classes and whatnot. So I mean, they overrate some of those guys. So I've been definitely invested in like drafting people in the second round, and at the moment, not a lot of people come to mind. Like you guys listed a lot of basically, bunch of decent prospects who are second round tier, and some of the other ones that are coming to mind are like the draft class I was using was like pretty old, so it hasn't been updated in a couple months. So it's like some of those names are either like first rounders now or actually really not on the radar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Svi. I think I would also want him on the Mavs. I think Gary Trent is all right. I'm a fan of Shake Milton. He might be a first though. So, Jalen Brunson, cool. I mean, I'm just listening to these guys' names, but I think there was a center though. Daniel Gafford, I think.
Yeah, he's returning.
He's returning, right? For a while though, at least in the tournament, he looked. I don't know. He looked impressive to me.
Yeah, he's got like really, really raw athleticism. He's explosive. I mean, with him, you'd be completely gambling on the upside.
Yeah.
But he's someone who's probably going to go first round next year in a weaker draft.
I do have a question. I don't know, because when you brought up 2K, I kind of just went there in my head. Barry Brown, is he on the draft list this year?
He declared without an agent. Mike, are you familiar with Barry? I'm not, because personally I'm not too familiar with him.
Kansas State.
Gary
No,
Brown?
I watched like one game. Yeah, Barry Brown of
Barry
Kansas
Brown
State.
would be.
Barry Brown. I do not know that name. I got Bruce Brown.
Yeah, I know
I
Bruce.
love Bruce Brown.
Yeah, Barry. I mean, he's good, but I'm not sure necessarily. Like, I'd be BSing you if I gave you a full answer right now. I'm gonna put him on my list though of people to like just start scouting because him and Xavier Sneed from Kansas State, they both stuck out in the NCAA tournament.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I brought him up. Bruce Brown, that's another player that I kind of learned about through 2K. I drafted him as just a throwaway pick, and he ended up becoming super great. So what do you think about him, Mike? What do you think his upside is?
So going back to Barry Brown, I do have him on my list. I just haven't looked at it yet.
Okay.
As far as Bruce Brown, up for him to be a better shooter. I think he's got some good handle. He's got a good size body. But right now, if you're looking at him as a shooting guard, he's not a bucket. I think he's gonna have trouble if he comes out right now. I have him feeling being a guy that's on your bench that gets in every now and then. Right now,
That's fair.
I agree, and he actually declared with an agent, and he really made a mistake by coming back. I mean, he's 22 now, I think, and he's a sophomore, which I don't really think that bodes well for anyone's stock. But I mean, he's got a quick first step. You know, he can pass. He got 3 assists a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, his role is probably coming off the bench, kind of being a utility guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to be much of a scorer in the NBA.
That's good.
Right.
Any other guys that kind of brought up in your head you just want to talk about?
Mike, do you got anyone?
Yeah, I feel like Mo Wagner's a guy people have been talking about a lot.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, he just declared yesterday, right? Yeah, this is a great opportunity to bring Fossil in because we were talking.
He's very passionate about Mo Wagner.
I mean,
maybe not in a good way.
I feel kind of bad for saying this because like all the recency, you know, just all the stuff that's been said about him recently, and he's been playing very impressively. I'll say that much. But just as far as his skill set goes, I think he should at least be drafted. That's a no-brainer. Okay. I think he could sneak into the first round as well. I would not be surprised, and depending on the team that drafts him, like I wouldn't be bad. But as far as he goes on the Mavs, I don't know. I feel like we've got enough big men. Like, I don't mind his game,
Exactly.
but I think his ceiling is kind of limited. And as far as things go, I would not. Let's put it like this: I would not be exactly happy if we drafted him with our pick. Maybe with the Portland pick, but even then, if there's like somebody who has perhaps more upside on the board, I'd probably rather tend towards that guy.
Yeah, I don't find anything wrong with that characterization. I think the reason most people are excited about him in terms like from a Mavs perspective is there was a video of him and Dirk last year.
I mean, he's another German who can shoot.
Yeah.
People love that. I mean, they really do. Like, I mean, we got Kleba.
Yeah.
People are infatuated with a German who can shoot.
Anybody read his letter that he released yesterday?
I never read it. I honestly was there for the headline.
Same.
You read the letter.
What was
he
it?
talked about Dirk a lot. He talked about Dirk a lot. Like, yeah, like he's like, you know, I was 14-year-old kid, and I watched Dirk Nowitzki go toe to toe with LeBron and D Wade, and I immediately bought that poster that said, you know, dreams are only crazy until they come true. Like he has it in German, and he said, I put it on my wall. Like I woke up every morning and looked at that poster. When I came to Michigan, I was the first thing I packed. I packed it carefully, put it on my wall, and that was how he ended his letter was with that line. Like he said, he watched a video of like Dirk's draft class, and when Michael Jordan announced he was coming back to play with the Wizards and how excited those guys were. And he said, seeing Dirk announce the other day that he's coming back, that's how he feels. Like Dirk is his Michael Jordan.
Wow.
His biggest dream right now is to just share a court with him. Now, with all that established, I don't want him on Mavericks either. Like we have enough want to shoot the ball on the team, and personally, I think his ceiling is like a Mirotic at best.
I could see that. I could see that as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt because we're watching that Rockets Wolves game, and Clint Capella just did a Euro step from the right hand side, and it was smooth as hell. I'm so impressed. If Bamba can do 1/8 of that, I'm down for it.
Yeah, I'm impressed with all of that you just said. I mean, like it's weird to me. The thing that stuck out from the most from that is he was 14 years old when that happened. Like, I think I was a senior in high school, and like I felt young. But man, he was 14 years old when that happened. Like,
I was 14 when that happened. We were 14 when that happened.
I was 17, 18, something like that. And like, oh my god, that is.
Yeah, man.
I was a senior in college when that happened, so.
Damn, we were all. That's definitely an array of different places in life. I think what you just said about the letter, Mike, really like it shows how sports kind of brings fans together across like vastly different places wherever you may be. I remember, I do this podcast with Basil and Jay, and all three of us are the same age, same graduating class, same high school. I mean, Richie went to the same high school, but he's much older than me.
Damn.
I'm not
Gonna
that
be
old.
But
Much
I
older.
would say
I'm not
3
40,
years.
I'm not 40.
3 years is much older than that. It shows my perspective. But I would say that's really what brings us together. I mean, I came across Mike on Twitter because of the Dennis Smith Jr. hype,
Yeah.
and honestly, I was surprised when his bio said he's from South Carolina, but he has that Mavs practice shirt on, right? And so I was like, this is very interesting. And then I saw a couple of his tweets, and I was like, damn, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. So I ended up following him, and you followed me back, and I'm really glad that happened because a lot of your tweets since then, I cannot describe certain situations that happened this season as a Mavs fan better than you did. So kudos to you. But then on the flip side,
thank you.
absolutely, man, anytime. On the flip side, you have somebody like Richie,
Oh no.
who's like,
I'm thrown under the bus. Stop the podcast.
no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. You recently graduated college, right?
Mhm.
And now you're doing all this work on Mavs draft, and all, like you've gotten credentialed. You've gone to what was that tournament that you went to?
Oh yeah, I went to Conference USA.
Yes.
Yeah, in
yes,
Frisco.
the CUSA. And now you're keeping tabs on players, like you're reaching out to some of them and stuff like that. I know I'm not overstepping any bounds by naming.
No, you're good.
But these are all things that are really surprising to me, at least as a fan, because I mean, I would say we're all fans first, right? Like it's kind of astounding to me that a guy like Dirk can be at the center of all of them. Like I'm a Mavs fan because of Dirk. I think we've talked about that on this podcast. I mean, countless times. Right?
Every episode.
Every episode we end it with just constantly talking about how amazing Dirk is, and it's crazy to me that all of this is even happening because he was so great, because he inspired each one of us. It just thinking about that kind of blows my mind a little bit, and it makes me feel a little bit of kinsmanship, if that's a word. I've been making up a lot of words today, but kinsmanship
Yeah, that's a
towards
word.
Mo Wagner, and you know what? Maybe we should draft him. It wouldn't be the worst thing.
We just
right?
convinced ourselves that we like Mo Wagner now.
Hey, kill two birds with one stone. I kind of talked about the letter, and then I got Dirk. But Richie, you are the only person that hasn't talked about Mo yet.
Oh, okay.
As a prospect, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think his best role is just being a stretch forward off the bench, like a better. Y'all remember Paralontic on the Hawks? This
Yeah.
is like a really. I feel like he's pretty
No,
obscure.
I was a Hawks fan at that time.
I think everyone was.
He was decent on 2K, so that's
Yeah.
how I remember him.
So he was a worse shooter than I think Wagner will be, but like he wasn't scared to body anyone up. Granted, he was much stronger than Wagner is.
Yeah.
But I think that he has the same potential to fill that same role. You know, he played 15, 16 minutes off the bench. He could shoot. He didn't hit that much, which was really disappointing. But Wagner, you know, could probably hit league average.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you're getting a nice bench piece off, you know, to shoot. I'm not sure that, you know, he can really do too much on defense against an NBA big. He may be able to have some inside game success because he has really good footwork. But other than that, I think he's mostly going to be an offensive piece off the bench.
Here's my gauge. Better or worse than Nicholas Versino?
Oh, better. Versino had that one chase down block.
By the way, is he
No,
still...
he's not on the Hawks. They cut him like right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Brissino. I feel bad. Bad.
Yeah, I agree.
But again, 5 years down the line, type of thing. He's a smart guy. I just think he just never found the confidence.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Mike. I mean, he had a lot of flashes, especially in terms of playmaking, where I was just very impressed by his vision, and he has the physical tools to do it. I don't think the timing was right for him in the Mavericks or him in the league in general.
Yep.
I think if he works hard enough, he plays his cards right, he'll be back. He has that level of basketball IQ.
100% agree. Um, so I'll do another one. How about better or worse than Frank Kaminsky?
Ooh. Man. Wow. You just threw me into wow.
He's
I'm
actually
gonna look up
dumbfounded
Frank
right now, Mike.
Kaminsky. Let's look up his stats because in my head I feel like he's not the same person that the stats sheet says. Better than let's see per 36. Then no worse, definitely worse. Although God, that field goal percentage is abysmal.
Oh yeah, it's awful, dude.
But he shoots 3. I don't know. This is so difficult. That is the best one. Dang.
With Kaminsky, the thing I dislike about him, even I guess shooting is one thing, like the field goal percentage, but I'm just appalled by his rebounding. Like he's worse than Dirk right now.
Yeah, it's something. I'd say if Kaminsky had the right role, he'd be better. So I'd say like the same. Man, that's a great question.
That's kind of where I would look if you're trying to like decide whether or not you want him on your team. I think Frank Kaminsky is probably the gauge if you like him.
Yeah.
You think Kaminsky should start next year?
No, I think he needs to continue being that bench player.
But they play him at the 5, and I think that's the problem. I think that's the problem in my opinion. I want him beside a rebounder like a Dwight.
I definitely think that if they played him next to Dwight, his numbers would be better. I mean, his numbers have been going up each season that he's had in the NBA, so it's not like he's playing abysmally, but I definitely think he's underwhelming, especially because, I mean, he had that great end to the tournament with Wisconsin, and I mean, I'm a state fan, so that was kind of bittersweet for me, but I do wish him the best because I feel like he should be able to succeed. He has the tools to succeed. I just don't know if Charlotte's playing him the right way.
Yep, I agree.
It's going to be interesting who they bring in as a coach. That's going to determine a lot.
I gotta say, my most lasting memory of Frank Kaminsky is just the way he pissed off the Harrison twins. Like, that interview. Man.
That's a blast.
As well, because he had a great tournament run and Mo had a great tournament run and similar skill sets.
Yeah. No, definitely. Falls, you got something to add?
Actually, yes.
You look so surprised.
Yes. For one, I mean, I'm not usually the guy who brings something up, but anyway, just jumping into the future, I guess by a year. What do you guys think about? I don't think I'm getting his name right. Darius Bazley.
The kid who went to the G League.
Yeah, the kid who's going to go to the G League instead of college.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Smart decision, and I hope it's a trend for the future. I don't know anything about his game though. I don't think that necessarily answers your question.
I mean, people were saying that he's a top prospect for next year's draft. So I figured Richie would know something about him.
Right now, I mean, like I take it 1 year at a time for the most part. I've looked a little bit into 2019. Sekou I think his name's Dembaya or something. It's something similar to that. He's the one who stood out the most. But I'll have to look into Darius Bazley.
Okay, because I remember your first or your second episode, we asked you for your draft board for 2018 tentatively. This was before the tournament.
Yeah.
And then we also asked who you were eyeing for 2019.
Right.
And I don't remember his name being on there.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really heard of him until the G League announcement.
Yeah. But you know what? Kudos to him. He's going to enter that lottery, and then if everything goes well for his career, everything goes as planned, he'll be re-entered into the lottery once he leaves the G League to go to the NBA. It's kind of an interesting / weird situation.
Yep.
Mike, what do you think?
So I don't know anything about his game. I take it 1 year at a time as well. But as far as his decision, like when I was back in college, many moons ago, I realized actually like, out of high school I was a pretty good basketball player myself, and me and my friend were actually joking about going to a tryout in San Antonio. when we graduated because I realized the loophole that you can go straight to the G League out of high school, and I always wondered why nobody did it, and I realized more recently that it's money probably. Um,
Yeah.
the salaries in the G League are ridiculous. The E League salaries, is what the G League salaries are. Like it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
I think that's finally going to be what gets the G Leaguers paid, honestly, because there's no way the NBA can defend that.
Yep, I agree with that. Completely agree. It's terrible what they're doing with the wages down there. I mean, it's like barely living wages.
It's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you remember, who was it last year that we had? I can't think of the guy's name. And on a two-way contract, or not a two-way, before the two-way. We signed him on a 10-day, and I think Rick Carlisle said he like saw him buying crackers or something at the grocery store to eat.
Yeah.
Utah.
Yeah, Jared Utah.
Yeah.
In Utah, yeah. It's like guys are living off like dollar store sandwiches and stuff like that in the G League.
$20,000?
Yeah, no, I mean that's below the poverty line. Like that's not.
That's well below the poverty line, dude. And that's annually.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Exactly.
I mean,
it makes
teachers
literally
struggle
no
and
sense.
they get paid like $50K a year. That's unbelievable.
I don't understand. Like, it makes sense for you to incentivize guys to want to be in the G League, in my opinion. I think that their logic behind it is that guys get money for going to the summer league, and guys get money for getting invited to camp, and they can use that to supplement the 20,000 or whatever. But not everybody's getting that opportunity, and I think that's not a smart way to look at it.
Yeah.
Chase guys overseas, and that's how you got guys potentially looking at Lonzo or LeVar Ball situation as a way to make actual money before they come to the league.
The WNBA is in a similar situation as far as salaries go. Their salaries are also awful. Like I think just recently, one of their better players, like in the WNBA, took like she's like over the age of 30, I think. So she's like winding down towards the end of her career. And recently, she took like a head coaching job at a college, but also she just signed with a team. I think the Lynx. So she's gonna be a college head coach, but also a player in the WNBA. And that's because the salaries are so paltry. And I think the argument they make there is because of the whole revenue sharing. Like, not a lot of people watch their games, apparently, and I guess it's the same with the G League. But at the same time, like, wow, you know, that salary is just abysmal, especially for the level of play. Like, it's one of the best leagues in the world in both cases, both, you know, genders or whatever. So I think they gotta incentivize it a lot more. Like, you know, plenty of players in both the G League and the WNBA opt for playing overseas because they make better money there. But I think it's just really there's no excuse for it because they can at the very least, even if it's not the franchises themselves, I think even the NBA, I guess it's sort of a slippery slope, but I feel like the money can come from somewhere to the point where these people can make like at least the living wage. If not, I'd ideally like to see like 6-figure contracts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The interesting thing about this entire discussion to me is that the NBA is kind of heralded as this super progressive league when it comes to their rules, and at least in a semi-political or socio-political way, that's what the public perception seems to be. But this entire discussion kind of reminds me that there's a lot of work to be done, at least in bridging the gap between college basketball or pre-professional sports and professional sports, especially when it comes to the G League. First off, you have that entire issue with the 2 drafts, especially with Darius Bassey. Then the question that I have is the 2-way contracts. Does a player who has not played for a college team, is that player eligible for a 2-way contract, or does that draft just give them a base level contract?
I think it only matters about if you've played in the NBA. So I think that if you come out of high school, you can go on a 2-way.
Okay. Because if they can, then that to me
Well,
seems...
oh, sorry, no. No, you mean like the year of? Sorry, I thought you meant after. No, when they can't have any NBA time. Okay, so they're ineligible.
Yeah.
1 year removed from high school or whatever the rule is. 19 or 1 year removed from high school. That's what his problem is to be still in high school.
Yeah, that's really disappointing to me then. I don't know. See, the athletes, no matter whether they're part of the G League, WNBA, or the NBA proper, they're still putting their bodies on the line. They're going to practice. They're using facilities, same as any other athlete. Yeah, sure. Some of the rigor, the players that they're going against, the level of play is different. But at the end of the day, they're still sacrificing similar things, and there should be at least relative compensation for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there needs to be some sort of referendum on this, and maybe a little bit more outrage. Well, not outrage. Outrage is a strong word. Maybe a little bit of talk on social media, stuff like Twitter, about maybe getting a living wage for G League players.
Yep.
At least, at the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, this just puts what Emmanuel Mudiay did by going to Guangdong Tigers into perspective. Like, at first I thought it was just a marketing ploy, but I really wasn't well versed in all of these bylaws and stuff. But now it just, it makes perfect sense. Like, if players are getting paid less than 30K to play a year, even in the G League, like, I would rather go overseas if I was in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you got to think about a lot of these kids coming from situations where like they're expected to be able to make money for their families and stuff like that. A lot of them. Netflix actually just released, and I'm kind of doing promo for myself here. A movie called Amateur. I'm about to actually write a review about it.
I've seen it. Yeah, I loved it.
And it addressed that topic very smartly, in my opinion. A kid making a decision to make money for his family in the movie. Now we're in a position where kids are being exploited because of the rules. They have no agency over their own lives, but other people can make money off of them until they turn 19, as it stands.
Right.
And things like that. They're making money off of these kids. The NCAA makes money off of these kids, but if they make money, it's a problem, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I saw Amateur last weekend, actually exactly a week ago. I saw it on Sunday, and that's really what struck me. I mean, they really humanized the main character, and they showed that he was struggling throughout his journey from his public school to Liberty Prep. But they also showed the cracks in the system pretty clearly, and they showed that the coach, although the coach wasn't necessarily a bad guy altogether, he was using the system. He was using the main character, who I forget his name, as a route to success, and he lied to him.
And all the adults were around him.
Yeah, even his dad was, right? I mean, the coach at one point, spoiler alert, says that you basically sold him to me. And that really turned my stomach, because, I mean, I've talked to Richie about this enough. Like, the NCAA is very corrupt. Like, there's a very big issue when it comes to collegiate basketball, and the ethics behind it. And we're just starting to see reports of athletes being paid under the table. But should these really be scandals?
Right.
It's kind of an ethics question. But going back to Amateur, the end of that movie really took me by surprise, because it's so clearly the right thing to do, but I didn't expect the coach at the end to be the guy that becomes his agent. And I think maybe that's a good parallel for players coming out of high school to take a little bit of agency and do some networking for themselves. I mean, it's very difficult for a lot of those athletes, but I think it is a route that we're going to see taken advantage of a little bit more in the future, because that idea is now a little more popular, especially with guys like Emmanuel Mudiay and Basil.
On that note, what do you guys think about perhaps one day undoing the whole limitation on, you know, not allowing high school players or kids from high school to declare for the NBA draft? Like, there's been, I feel like there's been some more talk about it recently, and my gut says, yeah, I think in the future, sometime in the future at least, we should let high school kids be able to declare for the draft again. But I don't know. I feel like that's an argument on both sides, that there's a lot of points that are valid either way. I kind of go back and forth on it myself sometimes. Like it on like the best case scenario with all these high school kids, it is pretty much worth it, right? But there's still plenty of ways where it can go wrong, and I'm not. It's just I don't know. It's tough because like not every kid coming out of high school is a Kobe. Sometimes they're a Kwame. So
Yeah, unfortunately. Mike, I would like to hear your take on it.
Okay. So yeah, this is another one of the issues that I was. I mean, I was in high school when that change happened, and close to graduating. So I was thinking about long term how I didn't like it when it happened. I don't like it now. I want to believe that the league is kind of waiting for the G League to get a one-to-one relationship with their big teams. And then I like to see it go to something like Europe, where you have your big team and you have your secondary team, and they allow kids to come out of high school. If they want to make some type of rule where kids can come out of high school and have to, and with the secondary club, that will be fine with me. Maybe even add like they do with the contracts, where if they meet certain parameters, they can come up to the big team. So that way they're kind of safeguarded. That goes along with making the G League a livable wage. If you tell a guy, you know, a guy who is a Kwame, for example, that he can come out and go get drafted into the league, go play in the G League, and make $50,000, $100,000. That's more than he was going to do doing anything else.
Right.
So if that's how it works, then that would make the most sense to me. And then you get rid of the people who sign these deals we're learning about with families and players to go to certain colleges and wear certain brands and things like that. That whole loophole is gone. Now you have people talking to these kids, maybe trying to get endorsement deals with them, but it's not a situation where they're going to be in trouble. Like they're pros at that point. I don't know. It works. It makes the most sense to me to let adults, people who can get jobs, make the most out of something that they're gifted at.
I was just about to say the same thing because I know friends who dropped out of college to go and be hackers and things like that, and they make good money. And some of them went straight out of high school. They didn't even touch college. They're allowed to. MLB, you don't have to go to college to play. They draft you, and they have the minor leagues. And you said the 1-to-1. I think that's a big thing. That's why it works in other areas. But if you can go pro in all these other areas because you're good enough, why is basketball just so much different? It's kind of silly to put it on a pedestal. I get that they want to make everyone, educated as possible. And I think a lot of that has to do with relating to fans. They know their market, and they want people to be relatable. But at the end of the day, you have to choose, do you want them to be relatable, or do you want the product to be at its best, where the players are constantly, the talent pool is constantly improving, where I think within a matter of the next 10 years, there should be another expansion team.
Yeah.
And things like that. I mean, the NBA is just going that direction where the audience is growing, the talent pool, is growing. I think the next step in getting that accomplished would be allowing kids to come from high school. I think you're going to see a bigger success rate compared to what it was when they got rid of the rule, because of how different. I mean, the G League, was that even a thing compared to what it is now?
No.
Like there were probably 5 teams. Yeah, it was a handful of teams. And there's just so much. The game has changed. There's an emphasis on shooting. I don't personally think college is where players develop. I think you're best doing things 100% focus on basketball rather than 80% basketball, 20% class on these quotations because Ben Simmons. But I don't really think I think it's a complete joke that they don't allow people to come from high school. Especially now, it's an outdated rule.
Yeah, This is an interesting discussion for me because it kind of is a perfect example of how my opinions about basketball, at least big picture policy stuff, has changed. Um, if you had asked me this a year ago, I would have probably given you some Charles Barkley-esque answer about how kids need to go to college, they need to get an education, because you hear about all these athletes who are super successful throughout their time, and then they retire, and they have a lot of money after playing professionally for almost a decade or more, and some of those players end up losing almost all of it, and it's really, really unfortunate because once you have that level of money, oftentimes you can afford a lifestyle that ironically isn't affordable for long periods of time. And there are so many players that I could name. I mean, I forget his name, but it's useless to even bring him up. I was watching a documentary on him the other day, but the other side to it, and what's made my opinion change is discussions like the one that we're having right now, and then like Mike brought up earlier, watching amateur and relating all these stories that I've read to it. I mean, the idea that brands set you free, that under the table deals are necessary because of the state that athletes and their families, or because of the places that athletes and their families are in. I feel like it's almost blind to say that athletes need an education and need to go to college for a year for that to be the case, because really, how much are those athletes learning? Like, how often are they going to class? I mean,
right.
Most of their time anyways is going to be spent practicing, watching film, and conditioning themselves. And if they somehow are in a program where going to class is really important and getting good grades is very difficult to do, then sure, that it's going to help them in the long run. But how many programs actually have that as a staple of what they're doing? I could probably count them on one hand, and even then, I'm not well versed enough in it to know whether that is truly the case. That's simply how they project themselves. And so, yes, it's important for student athletes to get a good education, but 1 year of college isn't really a way to do that. It's just a way to say that our athletes are better educated and kind of distance yourself from a little bit of the liability in that situation. And so it kind of turns my stomach a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, how about this for a proposal? I think the NBA has the money to be able to maybe give all of these players, if they do change the rule, give them some type of insurance policy or something that says that if they don't last X years, that the NBA will pay for 4 years of college or give them a scholarship or something along those lines.
Was it Dame Lillard who a couple of years ago was finishing his degree?
He came out of school after his junior year, so I think he only had 1 year.
I thought it was this. Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of players do stuff like that. A lot of players, stay in school or go back, depending on. It's usually based on their family situation, like that's gonna make them get a degree, type of situation. Where some guys just all about the money. But I think that's a way you get around that whole. They need the education. The second way would be to even have a program within the G League that educates players on the things that are going to be important, like financial management, things like that. Something along those lines. Like, there's many ways to do it. The whole send them to college for a year thing is fake, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really does. After reading through the different articles and reading stories, especially about players after they retire, it seems like it's not just a cop out, but it's a story that's told to basically exempt the league and the board of governors from I guess the pressure of changing their policies to favor the athletes themselves. I mean, as much as returning to what I was saying earlier, as much as we like to say that the NBA is supremely progressive, there still is a large amount of politics in the relationships between the Players Association, the Coaches Association, Refs Association, and the Board of Governors. At the end of the day, it is still a fraternity. and there are many different cogs working to keep the machine running. So I feel like this starts with fans, and fans need to become well read, because once I started reading about this stuff, and once I started talking to people who actually understood what was going on, talking to student athletes at UTD, for example, I really understood that the system to some extent is rigged against the student athlete.
Yeah, big time. And myself going to a big school, SEC school, and I took sports management classes, so I had classes with a lot of the athletes. Patrick DeMarco from the Falcons. And I had one professor that would like literally every class period, Patrick, what do you think about such? I was like, I felt sorry for the guy, but the topic came up a lot because, of course, you have guys like Patrick DeMarco, who's now an NFL player, who's making money, but then you had the volleyball players and stuff like that, and they're talking about how girls they aren't allowed to work or something along those lines.
Yep. They can't have a job.
Really?
And then like one of the girls was like literally starving, like one of the girls on the team, and her teammates literally had to bring her food because they realized that she did not have any, because she had no money, and it's one of those things where she ended up, I think, leaving school because of it. But who has sponsorships for the swim team, for the soccer team, for everybody? They make money off of the teams, whether they admit it or not, in one way or another. It just doesn't make sense for people to bring something to your school and not get anything. I mean, you get the education, whatever. But some of those people could have got academic scholarships too, if you want to have that argument. So then what?
Yep. And I remember hearing, this is my last thing, is that there was an NCAA player a few years ago, or maybe it was even like just 2 years ago, where he got suspended for having a job because he had this, like, it was a summer job and he wasn't allowed to. I mean, they're literally slaves to the NCAA, and it is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if your family is sending you to school, to eventually give them something back, like, how are you even supposed to do that? What if you get hurt? What if you simply just don't make it?
What was the basis under?
I gotta look up the story, but I think it was something. I mean, I know you're not allowed to have a job under the NCAA rules. Let me look.
Is there any justification that the NCAA gives?
Because they want
it's under their bylaw.
They want you to. I don't even know. I imagine they want you to just focus on that, and that they don't want to pay. So that's their cop out. That's my guess.
That's ridiculous.
The letter of intent. You sign your life. You sign away rights to yourself, basically. The letter of intent.
Yep.
Wow. That's like indentured servitude right there.
Yep.
Honestly, I mean, I remember my freshman year history class. We read stories about immigrants from Western Europe coming here on basically under indentured servitude, signing contracts and stuff, but they would be kept under horrible conditions, and this just sounds like an evolution of that. It just kind of makes me sick. Like, somebody starving on a volleyball team?
Shabazz Napier was one of them too. I don't know if you remember that, but he said there were so many nights he would just go to bed hungry, and he was the star of an NCAA championship team. Like, yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, even if you paid these guys like just the average living wage, like, that's enough. Like, yeah. You don't need to pay them out of this world. Like, you get it. You don't need to pay them millions of dollars, but like, geez, give them some respect.
I mean, it kind of
goes be able to send a couple of dollars home.
Yeah, it does. For me though, like, especially for big school programs, like the cost of a college education has gone up so much, and universities spend so much money on amenities and kind of extracurricular facilities now that it's just curious to me that they don't offer some sort of stipend to student athletes, and that it's not something that's a little more regular. Because at the end of the day, those students are bringing your college money. Forget the NCAA, like, you're selling tickets, merchandise, etc., on the backs of those students. So I think that there's almost like a local organizational issue there too that we haven't really touched on. Mike, it's been close to 3 hours, so we are really wanting to wrap it up. Dude, I appreciate you sticking with us so much. I mean, that entire last 45 minutes of the conversation were entirely unplanned, and I actually think it was probably the best part of this episode. Wow.
Definitely, I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I really did not think that it would go there. Props to Follow for bringing up the question. Richie, thank you for giving us that informative draft talk. Mike,
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's great to have you as always. Mike, we'd like to have you again anytime. Maybe not with Richie because
I don't want to steal your
not
thunder.
a knock on either of you.
No,
but
I don't.
yeah, that's the main goal. Like we want to get a cross section of both of your interests and what you write about, what you talk about, what you tweet about. But at the same time, I didn't get a good gauge of your personality, Mike, until our last topic of discussion, and I didn't have a good understanding of your experiences when it comes to student athletics and stuff like that until that last topic. So I'm definitely interested in having you on again, and or just talking to you about your experiences. That'd be dope.
Let me know.
Absolutely, man. Boswell, anything you want to say?
Yeah, it was a really good episode. It was a pleasure having you on, Mike, and I hope we see you again. I don't have a whole lot to add. This was actually one of my favorite episodes to talk through because it ended up being pretty informative. Usually a lot of times when we run over, which is every time, it's because we ramble about some certain aspect. But this time, everything had a sort of cohesion. I felt that I understood where everything in this conversation went from beginning to end, and I feel like every single topic we talked about, we brought up some pretty salient points, and I'm glad for it.
I mean, the lowest place that it went was me saying transcendental or whatever, and me messing up the intro announcer voice, and I messed it up on my introduction too. So whatever that says about me, but hey, it went all but up from there. I would take that anytime. I'll mess up on the jokes to get a more informative and conversational podcast anytime. We're not going to end this one with a well, I'll put it like this, with a Dirkle jerk. But I think we covered that already with the Mo Wagner story, and I don't want to sully our last topic of conversation with any
of that.
any of that kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this on YouTube, Mike, once again, thank you for coming. Richie, thank you for being here, my man.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys next month with the next episode of the URL podcast.